Okay, well, let us bow our heads and set our intention to have a productive meeting conducted with civility for the best interests of every Cocoa citizen and the desire to make our special city the best it can be. And with that in mind, I'd like to offer a poem for inspiration. I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree whose hungry mouth is pressed against the sweet earth's flowing breast, a tree that looks at God all day and lifts her leafy arms to pray, a tree that may in summer wear a nest of robins in her hair, upon whose bosom snow has lain, who intimately lives with rain. Poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, ma'am. Madam Clerk, our roll call, please.
Mayor Williams.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Warner. Here. Councilmember Bovair.
Here.
Councilmember Goins.
Here.
Councilmember Koss.
Here.
City Attorney Garganese.
Here.
City Manager Takana.
Here.
And Assistant City Manager Fuhr.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, first of all, I just wanted to recognize a couple of our Port Authority members that are here. Mr. Wayne Justice and Mr. Bob Harvey are here today, so just wanted to recognize them. And of course, our former councilman, Alex Greenwood. But anyway, we're going to move on into our agenda, approve our agenda. Item number 1 for May the 22nd, 2019.
I would like to amend the agenda. I'd make a motion to amend the agenda and approve it. The amendment would be to change the order so that item 7-3 becomes item 7-1, and the others are moved consecutively down so that the current 7-1 becomes 7-2, and the current 7-2 becomes 7-3. I think that would make for better discussion.
Now you want it 7 dash,
And with that amendment, I would move to approve the agenda.
you want it 7-3 to be 7-1.
Yes.
And then 1 move to 2 and 2 move
Yep.
to 3.
Second.
Okay, we got
I
to,
need to also make, well, after you done,
Okay.
also amend awards, number 5, the track team had a schedule conflict today. Because due to graduation this week, it's been kind of a rough week for everybody. So I'd like to table that to the next meeting.
okay.
Okay, so I amend my motion to include postponing that.
Okay, we got
There would be
a motion from Councilwoman Cost with changes, and a second from Deputy Mayor Warner. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Okay, we're going to move on to our minutes from our regular meeting of April 10th, 2019, and our District 1 Town Hall meeting of April 16th, 2019.
Motion to approve.
We got a motion from Councilman Bovair.
I have an amendment. I would like to make a change to the minutes and a comment. Just a comment that I know the minutes are really difficult to do. I've done them in my lifetime. It's one of the most challenging things you can do, but they're really important to me as a council person, I think to a lot of folks in terms of recording the official record. So I don't mean to seem to make minor changes. I just want you to know. I think they're really important. I think we're getting caught up on them, right, because we have a new person that's going to be helping us. The change that I'd like to make was on page 10, paragraph 3, and it was in reference to the domestic abuse program report. And it stated, I think it was the second sentence, that last year they had received 301 calls. That actually did not refer to calls. They get 2,000 calls that referred to the number of women that are sheltered. So it was significant in that And this is how I would like it replaced, so that it would read, on average, 260 women per year are sheltered. Last year, that increased to 301. And with that change, I would move to approve the minutes.
We got a motion approved.
Well, I gotta make my motion to accept the
Okay.
changes made by Councilwoman Cost to reflect the minutes of the meeting.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion from Councilman Bover and a second from Councilman Goin with changes. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Okay, we're going to move on to awards and presentation. We have certification for the deputy mayor, where she's attended the Institute of Elected Municipal Officials 3, I guess phase 3, or,
Yeah, I guess they got, what, 4 now, Don?
yes, there's a 4.
Okay.
So this one here is from the Florida League of Cities.
We don't need to go down there.
So I'm just going to present this to you.
Oh, thank you.
And I'd like to see it.
Making fun of us, too.
That's all right. Oh, the height?
Thank you.
Well, I could have went down and you could have stayed up there. Well, congratulations.
Thank you very much. I know that we have a couple of our new council members that are going to go to their first emo soon, and I hope you'll all enjoy it as much as I've always enjoyed going. It's about the only real learning experience that there is out there for
Yeah, and there's a,
public officials, and you can't beat it. It's like a year of college in 2 days.
yeah, a lot of good information, that's for sure. Okay, we're going to move on to item number 2 under awards and presentation, which is a proclamation for National Safe Boating Week. I'm going to read that real quick. Whereas the recreational boating season approaches its maximum activity and Florida leads the nation in registered vessels with approximately 1 million and with over 22 million boaters using and enjoying Florida's beautiful waterways annually. Whereas approximately 650 boaters die each year and Florida leads the nation in the annual number of boating accidents and deaths, with the leading cause of death, 84.5% being drowning, even with strong swimmers, and with 70% of the operators involved in accidents having no formal boating education. And whereas the National Safe Boating Council and the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary is kicking off its 2019 Wear It Safe Boating campaign to educate the boating community about wearing life jackets, taking about safe boating courses, having their boats receive a safety examination for the required equipment and promoting other safe boating practices. And whereas Brevard County has a multitude of organizations involved in helping to educate the public, including the U.S. Coast Guard and the Coast Guard Auxiliary, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, the United States Sail and Power Squadrons, and the Brevard County Sheriff Office, Agriculture and Marine Unit, who all emphasize getting a vessel safety check, displaying the safety seal, always wearing a life jacket, and attending the classroom version of about boating safety to attain their Florida boating license. And whereas those who have taken the classroom version of the About Boating Safety given by the USCG Auxiliary or the U.S. Power Squadron has less than 1.9% fatality rate. And whereas these organizations offer education opportunities to the public, not only during Safe Boating Week, but throughout the year, using methods including, but not limited to, vessel inspection, safe boating classes, hands-on training, knot tying, GPS classes, flare use, boating guides pamphlets, fire extinguisher seminars, education exhibits, and marina opening and boating shows, classroom participation, and in the water life jacket demonstrations. Now therefore, I, Mayor Jack Williams Jr., on behalf of the City Council of the City of Cocoa, Florida, do by support the goals of the National Safe Boating Council and proclaim May 18th through 25th, 2019 as National Safe Boating Week. I don't know if the gentleman is here.
Nope.
I guess he didn't make it, so. We'll make sure we get that to him. And we're going to move on to item number 3 in our awards and presentation, which is a proclamation for the first Friday of National Gun Violence Awareness Day. And this is whereas every day 100 Americans are killed by gun violence, and on an average there are nearly 13,000 gun homicides every year. And whereas Americans are 25 times more likely to be killed with guns than people in other high-income countries. And whereas protecting public safety in the communities, they serve as mayor's highest responsibilities. And whereas support for the Second Amendment rights of abiding citizen goes hand in hand with keeping guns away from people with dangerous histories, and whereas mayors and law enforcement officers know their communities best, are the most familiar with the local criminal activity and how they address it, and are best positioned to understand how to keep their citizens safe, and whereas in January of 2013, Hadia Pendleton, a teenager who marched in President Obama's second inauguration parade, was tragically shot and killed just weeks later. Should be now celebrating her 22nd birthday, and whereas to help honor Hadia and the 100 Americans whose lives are cut short, and the countless survivors who are injured by shootings every day, a national coalition of organizations has designated June the 7th, 2019, the first Friday in June, as the 5th National Gun Violence Awareness Day. And whereas the idea was inspired by a group of Halea's friends who asked their classmates to commemorate her life by wearing orange. They chose the color because hunters wear orange to announce themselves to other hunters when out in the woods, and orange is a color that symbolizes the value of human life. And whereas anyone can join this campaign by pledging to wear orange on June the 7th, the first Friday on June in 2019, to help raise awareness about gun violence. And whereas by wearing orange on June the 7th, 2019, Americans will raise awareness about gun violence and honor the lives of gun violence victims and survivors. And whereas we renew our commitment to reduce gun violence and pledge to do all we can to keep firearms out of the wrong hands and encourage responsible gun ownership to help keep our children safe. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Jake Williams Jr., on behalf of the City Council of the City of Cocoa, Florida, do hereby proclaim Friday in June 7th, 2019, as National Gun Violence Day. And, so if you all like to come down, we'll take a picture with them.
You want me to stay here and just scoop down, or? Okay. Okay. Come on, Anthony. Step up a little bit for the people behind you. Step up. We don't want to be in the front. You want me to stoop down a little bit, or? Can you see Brenda?
Yes, she can see me, I can see her. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, ladies. Anthony. Hold. Watch his hands.
Brenda, Deputy Mayor, we're gonna have to bring back the 3-inch heels.
Okay, here comes.
But anyway, we're going to move on to item number 4, which is update on Port Canaveral, and we have the Commissioner Wayne Justice.
I just wanted to do a little introduction. First of all, I don't know how many of you have found it confusing, but we have a lot of different districts. We have our COCO districts, we have our county districts, and we have our Port Commissioner districts, and we're very fortunate to have 2 representatives, as mentioned earlier. A lot of people know Commissioner Harvey. He represents most of, I think, District 1. The District 4 that I live in, 3 and probably parts of 2 are represented by Commissioner Wayne Justice. He has been in office since 2014. He was the chairman last year of the Port Authority, formerly a Coast Guard Academy and Naval War College graduate. He spent 37 years in the Coast Guard, with 15 of those assigned in Florida. Wayne Justice had 12 years on cutters, specializing in counter-drug, illegal migrant search and rescue patrols. He retired as a Rear 2-star admiral, so we're very fortunate to have you as our commissioner.
Yes, we are.
All right, good evening. This works fine, okay. Mr. Mayor, thanks. Council, appreciate the opportunity to be here. It's kind of a good day to be updating you. Okay, we had a commission meeting this morning, and we had some pretty exciting turns of events, and I'll talk about them. Those of you, some of you are new on the board, so I got a couple of history slides here, just to kind of get you up where we're at here. This 1950, we were nothing but a beach. They cut a hole in the beach, and Ed Lanning was there, I think.
Yes, he's in that picture, actually.
Yeah, he's doing in the middle of it.
We were pretty Spartan in the day. Those were our offices back then. Obviously, we're doing a whole lot better now. Just a couple of points. We used to be fishing, oil, and now we've expanded significantly. We're 1,000 acres dry. We are elected, which is not the norm in ports. And most importantly, we can tax. And we have not levied taxes since 1986. So we generate revenue off of our business model there. What we look like right now? I want to specifically point out, just to understand, we're a cruise port. That's cruise and parking there. Our other business lines are solid and growing, but obviously we're a cruise port. The bottom line in the red is what really matters. 7 years ago, we were $40-some million, and 7 years later, we've doubled our revenues. So things are going just fine out there. Cruise, cargo, recreation, and real estate, 4 business lines that we concentrate on. That's unique. Again, a lot of ports don't have the recreation entertainment side that we do. Most importantly, we're a deep water port. That means you got to be deep. 3 years ago, we completed a widening and deepening dredging. We're blessed in Canaveral with benign sand in our port, so it's pretty easy to dredge once you get your permitting. Just move the sand out, and it works out pretty well. Cruising, this is our Cruise Terminal 1, completed about 5 years ago. Up until now, it's one of the nicest terminals probably you're going to find anywhere, newest, and works well enough that we are blessed with having the 2nd largest cruise ship in the world tying up there. It's a 3-year-old Harmony. It's only 1 foot smaller than the largest cruise ship in the world, okay, which is her sister ship down in Miami. But every Sunday, 6,500 people get off, 6,500 people get back on. Just one ship. Wow. Our cruise operation's going so well that we needed another terminal. In the center there is Christine Duffy, who's the chairman of the board of, she's the CEO of Carnival Cruise Lines, and we are building this as we speak. This, it's down by the boat ramps on the southeast side, Terminal 3, and we're hard at work at it. It's a $160 million project. It's one of the top 5 largest projects in the greater Orlando area under construction right now. There's the waterfront, there's the terminal, and then there's parking garage, all into construction right now. Waterside ops are actually, getting close to completion, and we're well underway on the shore side. This will be ready by next spring, summerish. For that, the newest, largest cruise ship that Carnival builds will be brought here and home ported in this terminal. It's got a roller coaster on it, These cruise ships are unbelievable these days. Most importantly and uniquely, this cruise ship is going to be powered by LNG, liquefied natural gas. We will be the first cruise terminal in the United States that will home port and fuel a cruise ship powered by liquefied natural gas. It's a big step. Up in Jacksonville, there's cargo ships. Jacksonville, there's every UPS trucks use LNG. I mean, they've got it produced and stored and transferred up there. But cruise ships this will be the first cruise ship powered by it, and we're working to be able to bunker them and give them the fuel. So that's a very important step. LNG is cleaner, it's cheaper, cleaner and cheaper, and made in the United States. So it's got the right things we want to do. They produce up there 125, this is up in Jacksonville, 120,000 gallons a day. There's a 2 million gallon storage tank, and those trucks shipping around. Given our success with Carnival, this week, we just announced, and just today we got, we go ahead and we voted for it and signed it. The Disney came to us and they said, oh, by the way, we've got 2 new ships coming, and we need to put them somewhere, and we like you guys. And we said, yes, thank you very much. We like you as well. And we're going to spend, we okayed today a $48 million project to take Terminal 8, which is the middle terminal there where Disney ties up. Going to refurbish that whole thing, plus they need more room over the one to the left. So we got another $48 million project that's going to upgrade the terminals. And then 2 years from now, 2 brand-new Disney ships will be pulling into the port, replacing the ones that are there. And Carnival's a 25-year contract. This is a 20-year contract with Disney. We're moving forward. This is looking ahead. Between the 2 of them, I don't even want to begin to talk about the potential revenues or impacts to this region, but it is substantial. It's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. And of course, it affects a whole lot of people. So, plus it opens up doors for other opportunities. And so there's Disney, and so it's really good news for the area today. 6-ship day up there. We got another one coming. And a day like that, 45,000 people will get off the ships, and 45,000 will get back on them. So, as you can imagine, all the food and fuel and supplies and all stuff that goes with it, and all the hotels and transportation, it's all good news. I'll always make this point, and those of you who are new, I'll say it again. There's no walls around that port. We're open for business. We don't care what your angle, what you want to provide tours here or tours there, or provide, compete for this business or that. We're there to support, and we work real hard to make sure that the community has the opportunities. And if you don't feel that way, please let us know. All right. Shifting to cargo. Cargo is again growing steadily. We've got a fuel farm there that provides all of the aviation fuel for the international flights at Orlando Airport. It also provides all the gasoline for our county. Okay, a whole lot of fuel coming in and going out of there, and actually these days it's actually only at half capacity. I've lost the, no I haven't. Over here we've got, that's an aggregate business. Those are small rocks. Those small rocks go by conveyor belt, go into a big pile, go out in a truck. The I-4 project is built with that aggregate right there. That ship's been coming in for a long time, and it's going to keep coming in for a long time because the I-4 is never going to be done.
True, very true.
It's a wonderful business model.
Yes, it is.
Job security.
We've got containers. Down here, we've got, these are frozen warehouses. We've got one of the largest on the East Coast frozen products that come in and get distributed, turned over. Automobiles come in. That's a new business line for us, automobiles this year, or last year, really. Nice, clean, easy business. And so the cargo is good and steady. One of the ones that's pretty interesting, I think my next slide has it. Okay, that's a picture of and just recently, that's an 800-foot cargo tanker that came in full of gas and helps fill up the tanks there. Morton Salt. Morton Salt in the last 2 years has doubled in size of production here. Why is that? Because we like rock salt in our food now. Okay, I'm sorry, sea salt. We like sea salt. So they now produce sea salt there. America's great, isn't it? You know? I mean, salt is salt, guys, to be honest.
Isn't Morton one of the oldest? They were there in the 70s.
Yes,
Yeah.
they've been there, but it's always industrial salt, until now. Now they actually have to build a whole other building and stock the shelves with sea salt.
Wow.
We have the largest, this is new for us, it's the tallest mobile harbor crane in the nation. The cranes we have are old and used, and we needed some more, plus we needed a tall crane for a reason. I'll get to that. So we've invested in that. A lot of wheels, 104 wheels on that thing. You can take it anywhere just about, as long as you don't have a roof. It's pretty tall. A little side point before I move on here. I wanted to make a point. This is a data point for our economy, okay? 2 years ago, we were bringing in 40,000 tons of lumber a year, 40,000 tons. This year, we're bringing in 400,000 tons of lumber, okay? Okay, all that lumber comes in off the ship. We store it wherever we can. We hardly have room for it. Gets trucked away. It's into construction between here and Orlando, and the next ship comes in. It's just an interesting data point as far as how our economy is going. I just took this picture today. Lumber's piled, trucks are lined up, and it's just the way it goes. Okay. A little teaser here. I'm not going to talk about the recreational side of it too much, but this area right over here is bound, hopefully bound for an aquarium. Okay, the Brevard Zoo is interested. We've worked out an acceptable leasing arrangement for us and them, and they're in a capital improvement project to get some money up to be able to build the aquarium, and we've got a place for them. So as our county and community rallies around that, I think that's a wonderful opportunity. It's not just a tourist thing, and there's environmental, I mean, there's a research thing, there's an educational thing, and it's in a great location. It's on a river, you know, on a river that needs some help, so cross our fingers on that one. Well, I'll finish up here. I just want to talk commercial space. We've been bringing rockets around for a long time, but now it's pretty exciting. Rockets take off, they land on barges, we bring them back into our port, and everybody gets to look at them. Okay, and now they get craned off. SpaceX said, hey, you know, we have to rent this crane. It costs a lot of money, and we said, hey, we're getting a new crane. We're going to make sure it's tall enough to pick up the Falcon 9. So that's what we did, and so we're getting ready to transition to using our crane to take their rockets off, which everybody saves money. Well, let me see. They save money, we make money, so it's all good. Just a quick point about commercial space. If you look on there, and this is not really a good slide, but it makes a point. Right there is the Falcon 9. Over here is the new Glenn rocket. It's a whole lot bigger. Blue Origin's coming in. They're coming in soon. And what we've seen SpaceX do in the last 2-3 years, Blue Origin's going to do it bigger. And it's all coming. I mean, it's almost here. Blue Origin, instead of landing on a barge, they're going to land on a 660-foot ship. That 660-foot ship needed a place to go. So guess what? We built them a place to go. All right? Or they're going to go somewhere else. So that star up there is now this. And we put a significant amount of money into it. But it's going to be multi-purpose. But a sight to be seen is when a 700-foot ship comes in with a huge rocket and we have to get it off and move it somewhere. It's going to be something, going to be exciting. I want to make some points. We continue to work, and you know, we're not an island. I mean, this whole, none of us, so we all know there's state money, there's federal money. We work pretty hard at that, and we've got, we're going to work to get that 401 drawbridge raised. We're spending $18 million this year on the sand bypass project. That doesn't affect Cocoa, but it affects the beaches. Dredging, we got some other projects, and it's working really well. We're pretty excited about the opportunities that's provided us. I'm going to just wrap up again. You know, we're a port, we're a port district, we're a county, but we're a Central Florida region, and we're really a national asset. And we look at it from all those levels and make sure that we're attending to our business with a strategic way of doing it. And that's what the tower looked like during the hurricane. And with that, I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all, and I'll take any questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask, just Commissioner, I think I understand the LNG, the liquid natural gas, that's coming from Jacksonville, right? And
No.
It's not?
It will not be.
So
The
is it
liquefied
stored-
natural gas,
Yeah.
which is compressed natural gas, the quantities that cruise ships need, the state of Florida at this time doesn't produce the quantities needed to fill the so what Shell Oil is doing, Shell out of Jacksonville, is they're building a barge, the liquefied natural gas barge. It's going to get the LNG in from Georgia. Okay? The quantities of LNG are in Georgia, in Texas, Louisiana. Okay? The state of Florida uses natural gas, produces some, but we're still getting into that. Now, down the road, we're hoping to be able to produce it, store it.
Well, they
do it
dropped
here.
the plans for the pipeline over the lagoon, right? I mean, at one time, they were talking about a pipeline.
Yeah, that would have nothing to do with
Okay.
this
Okay.
here.
So that's completely
If
different.
we ever were to produce natural gas here, the pipeline would come in through the Kennedy Space Center, and it wouldn't be over the, that's down the road. Right now, it's going to be barged in from Georgia, is the answer.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
thanks a lot.
Enjoyed it.
Great job.
If I can get this off, I'll be all set.
Okay.
I can't. I'll let somebody else.
Thank you once again, ladies.
I'm required.
Thank you, ladies.
Okay, we're going to move into our delegations here. Up first, we got Kathy, I can't even pronounce your last name. I'll just call you Kathy. You can state your name and address, and which is,
Hold on, I've got to end his slideshow and get him.
and then Kathy's with she's with our Sister City program.
Aha. Okay. Hello, Mayor, council members. Thank you for allowing us to come here with a little update. As you know, the Sister City program, since 2007, our program has been building relationships based on culture, art, education, business, and travel exchanges, creating lifelong friendships that provide prosperity and peace through citizen diplomacy. So we're about building relationships. That's the main thing that we are. So this was one, well, actually quite a few relationships I built. I'm not sure what the year is. You'll see there, Mayor Williams, you're in that picture. Back when Mayor Blake was the mayor. And those were, that was the mayor and the team from Beit Shemesh that came over to Cocoa. All right, so talking about building relationships, in 2008, we sent this man, Mayor Blake, over to Israel. And this is his infamous on the camel photo that he will never be able to live down. But that wasn't all he did when he was in Israel. He did something else that was kind of interesting that started a long-term relationship for us. He went to Bronco Weiss High School over in our sister city of Beit Shemesh, the largest high school in Beit Shemesh with over 1,250 students. And he was on a work project there. And they worked in the library. They built did some beautifying things, built some gardens for the students were going to use later. We started a pretty great relationship with that high school. The principal at the time was Eliza Block. Now, fast forward 10 years, Beit Shemesh has, let me tell you about Miss Principal Block. Her goal was to know every student by name. She stood at the front door, greeted them by name in the morning. Pretty great. Okay, fast forward 10 years, Beit Shemesh has a municipal election. Guess who becomes mayor? Principal Block is now Mayor Eliza Block of Beit Shemesh. And so all those people she greeted, they all became voters, and that was pretty smart on her part. So she is now our counterpart, or your counterpart, Mayor Williams. So there's her size. We were talking about size, right, for T-shirts. She's not a very big woman, okay? So anyway, we had a representative this past week come from Beit Shemesh, Sharona Katane, and she did bring gifts, and you have one of those gifts right there, right, Mayor? She brought it was a picture that shows all of the current archaeological digs in our sister city of Beit Shemesh. Remember, Beit Shemesh is almost, it's almost 3,000 years old. It is mentioned in the Bible. It has lots of digs, including one of the biggest ones in the state of Israel right now, dating back to the time of King Hezekiah. So that's happening in our sister city. So that's our gift from our sister city, from Mayor Block to our mayor. We also gave gifts back, a memory book of pictures of things we've been doing. What I'd like to do now is just read from the letter that was addressed to Mayor Blake. Dear Mayor, to Mayor Williams, I am the newly elected Mayor Beit Shemesh, Israel, and I'd like to introduce myself and make your acquaintance. Over the past 15 years, there's been a warm relationship between residents of our two communities. Our cities have enjoyed welcoming and hosting groups of high school students and adults for mutual visits, tours, and cruises. During my service as director of the largest high school in the city, I welcome groups from the Cocoa area, volunteering to teach English with my students and do the work in the gardens. One of your predecessors, Mayor Mike Blake, also enjoyed a week with us touring and visiting. People from your community and from communities along the Space Coast have worked together to support educational projects in our elementary and secondary schools, and we hope in the summer of 2020 we will be able to send a delegation of grade 10 and 11 high school students to participate with their peers from the Space Coast in a STEM session at Kennedy Space Camp. We consider these projects a means to break down barriers and prejudices and to bring people together from different cultural backgrounds. It's important for us to continue these joint projects. I sincerely hope you'll be able to visit us here in Beit Shemesh in the near future, and I will be honored to welcome you and show you your accomplishments of our communities working together. So that's an open invitation to all of you, I think. So you have the original letter to that?
Yes, ma'am.
And we just wanted to update all of council and everybody at City that this is an ongoing, thriving relationship that we've got between the two cities with exciting projects coming up. And I'll be back in a month to tell you about this next project coming up, and then in another month for other exciting things. Thank you for allowing me to
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll try to close this out for you. Oh, he took it off. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Cal.
And up next, we have Candace Rogers.
Candace Rogers, 93 Delanoy Avenue. Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to speak. Tonight, there will be further consideration to the promenade redesign. I am not here to tell you what I would like, but rather to stress that we do have a waterfront master plan that reflected the elements most desired by the majority of citizens. These were gleaned from the 3 workshops, numerous meetings with staff, and many emails to the city. This was a plan of many and not one individual. Plans should be flexible as unforeseen obstacles may occur. However, the spirit of the plan should be kept intact. Elements should be resilient, sustainable, and be made with the best materials that can be afforded. The process of executing the plan seems to be what is the underlying issue. One element that was supported by the residents was to have a waterfront advisory committee. This would be designed to solicit, consolidate, and curate public comment for staff consideration and keep the public informed. This would allow those that serve to consult in those areas of expertise that will be needed as we progress. After the completion of the waterfront, a board would be formed to oversee the waterfront is accessible, viable, environmental, and sustainable. Over 200 residents supported this idea, signed the petition, which was presented to council and the CRA. In my opinion, this would be utilizing assets within our community and would result in a better product that is supported by the residents. There is also concern that placing the Civic Center at Lee Winter Park would be unsuitable due to the rising waters. This is a valid point and should be taken under consideration. Since the proposed center is the same design as in New Smyrna Beach and occupies a very similar site, I reached out to the city manager that referred me to the capital expense manager. We had a very informative and productive conversation. What I would like to address is the issue of flooding. The Brannon Center property is located in flood zone AE, which required a minimum floor elevation of 7 feet. The building was designed to be 2 feet greater than this requirement and was built with a finished floor elevation of 9 feet. Parking was discussed as they too have many events and heavily used park activities. By code, their building only required to provide 59 parking spaces. The decision was made to keep the existing number of parking spaces, 70 plus, above the requirement, including an additional handicap space, since this location serviced multiple purposes. It would seem that our 124 plus or minus spaces for public parking and 23 trailer boat spaces plus or minus may be adequate. If the feasibility and geophysical tests indicate that Lee Winter Park site is suitable, please take this additional information under consideration when thinking about moving the Civic Center out of its proposed site.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Mr. Bob Harvey.
Good evening, Bob Harvey, 29 Riverside Drive, Cocoa. I'm here this evening representing the Broadmoor Acres Community Restoration Preservation 501c3, also known as BACRAP. I'm the chairman of the board for this nonprofit. I understand a letter with some inaccurate and disparaging information about BACRAP was sent to the council, and I'm here to respond to that letter and address any concerns you may have. What I'm handed to the clerk is our response to that specific letter against BACRAP and that you received, and an endorsement letter from Broadmoor Acres' longest living resident. Mrs. Sheriff has lived in Broadmoor Acres since her home was built in 1953. First, a few points about BACRAP. BACRAP is a 501c3 nonprofit whose purpose is to revitalize the Broadmoor Acres community in the city of Cocoa. For those of you who don't know, Broadmoor Acres is an incredibly diverse neighborhood in the heart of Cocoa's core, which has been identified by the city itself for increased support. It is a historic neighborhood built in the 1950s. BACRAP members and supporters are working to revitalize and restore Broadmoor Acres primarily through facilitating the removal of absentee landlords and repairing or tearing down abandoned buildings before helping would-be owners find mortgage funding to buy their own homes. In the near future, we will break ground on our first new construction home. It hasn't been done in 75 years. Our goal is to change Broadmoor Acres from primarily run-down rental properties with absentee landlords to a neighborhood of owner-occupied housing where neighbors feel more comfortable interacting with each other. One example of our success is a Hispanic family of 4 who were paying $1,400 a month for rent, but now own their own home for a mortgage payment of only $600 per month. Another example is an African-American single father of 5 who, rather than paying $900 a month in rent, now owns the very same house for a mortgage payment of just $700 a month. BACRAP has never received any money from the city of Cocoa. In fact, through our efforts, we've saved the city of Cocoa funds they were spending to clean up abandoned properties. Nor has BACRAP received any special treatment from any kind from the city of Cocoa. We follow the rules just like homeowners and other citizens. BACRAP operates primarily on donations and sweat by our board members and volunteers, and our executive director, Mr. Larry Sinclair, who is not paid, has never taken money from BACRAP, and in fact has donated considerable time and funds of his own in this effort. When it comes to stepping up and helping others in our community, many people talk a good game and say they'll help, but sadly, few of them actually step up to help. Our members and supporters are stepping up, and we are making a difference in the lives of Cocoa residents. To date, we have successfully transitioned more than a dozen homes from absentee landlords and drug dealing hangouts to owner-occupied housing. We installed security cameras, automatic sensor lighting, and worked with the City of Cocoa Police to dramatically reduce crime. We've also worked with the American Red Cross to install more than 100 smoke alarms and supported neighborhood community Thanksgiving dinners and annual Christmas gift giving to neighborhood children. Finally, in the last 12 months, we helped repair or install 23 new roofs on different homes. Why someone would want to disparage a nonprofit charity that has a documented record of doing good things for our neighbors right here in our own city is beyond me. Nonetheless, I'm here to offer my time to address any concerns you have. As the chairman of the board, it is my hope that you will consider the source when receiving such letters and will come directly to us to seek our side of the story. Again, I'll make myself available at your convenience anytime you'd like, if you'd like to discuss BACRAP further. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay, we're done with, I guess we don't have any more cards for delegation, so we're going to move on to our consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda is written.
We got a motion to approve our consent agenda from Councilman Bover.
Second.
Second from Councilman Goin. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Okay, we're going on to our public hearings. Mr. City Attorney?
Community Service Director on this. Right?
Okay.
Thank you.
It's about the CDBG and Home Action Plan.
Okay, so you don't have to read this one. Okay, I got you.
I hope I don't have to read the plan into the...
Yeah.
No.
Mayor, I just want to announce that the city received $177,490 in community development block grant funds and $65,872.88 in home grant funds. These are our federal funds that come from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. I just want to quickly go over the proposed agencies and funding sources. Community Services Council, $9,623. Central Brevard Sharing Center, $11,000. Salvation Army, $6,000. Park improvements to Dr. Jolie Smith Park, $65,369. Repayment of the Section 108 loan this city is currently applying for, $50,000. I just want to add that on Tuesday, we received an email from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development that we did receive the Section 108 loan. That's $894,000. CDBG administration, $34,498. Fair housing, education, and outreach, $1,000. For the home program, our housing assistance program is $60,603.05, and then administration is $5,269.83. Staff is requesting that council hold the second and final public hearing to approve the City of Cocoa's FY 2019-2020 CDBG and Home Action Plan, authorize submission of the plan to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and authorize the mayor to sign all subsequent certifications and agreements.
Thank you, ma'am. At this time, I'm going to close it to the council and open to the public, because this is a public hearing, so if there's any comments from the public, this is your time. Seeing none, I'm going to close it to the public, reopen it to the council. What is the wishes of the council?
Motion to approve?
We got a motion from Councilwoman Coss,
Second.
second from Deputy Mayor Warner. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Item number 2.
Mayor, this is asking that council approve the fourth modification to the Adamson Creek Binding Development Agreement between the City of Cocoa and D.R. Horton Incorporated, and authorize the city manager to execute the same, provided that a revised performance bond in a form approved by the city attorney is first received. Based on some of the discussions with D.R. Horton and the residents in the Phase 1A, they believe that the residents would prefer certain amenities over the ones that were proposed in the past. So mostly it's going to be fishing lakes in tracks F, G, and E in Phase 1A, and Phase 1B, Track D. We're going to add an observation deck to Track E, Phase 1A, and then in Phase 1A, Tract M, a larger tot lot, a larger covered pavilion, bike racks, grills, and trash receptacles. Staff is asking that you approve the fourth modification to the binding development agreement.
Thank you, ma'am. At this time, I'm going to close it to the council and open it up to the public for public comments. This is a public hearing. If anyone have any questions or any concerns, come forward. This is your opportunity. At this time, I'm going to close it to the public and open it back up to the council.
Motion to approve.
We got a motion from Councilman Bovair,
Second for discussion.
second from Councilwoman Cost with discussion.
I was really just a little confused what's changing, because on these, the tables that you have here is what we have in brown. Is that what's changing? So they're,
Correct. When we originally started working on the fourth modification, we also went into Phase 1C, but we still working on with the PUD, it requires a 20% open space, and so we'll be coming back for a fifth modification. This initially occurred because there's a boardwalk, a proposed boardwalk in the wetlands, and the cost of that is very expensive for D.R. Horton, and they, in talking with the HOA, they have thought that it would be better for them to provide different amenities. But for right now, we're just focused on Phase 1A and 1B. We'll be coming back in the future for Phase 1C and different modifications.
Mr.
That
Seaman.
20% overall is for the overall PUD, which would include all phases. So they're going to come back, and we're going to make sure as they true up on the next phase, because they kind of like overlap some of these amenities between the phases. They're kind of like right in the middle and overlap.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Any more comments?
Yeah, but it's a representative for D.R. Horton here as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
We have any questions? Okay. Okay, well, we got a motion from Councilman Bovair, a second from Councilwoman Cost. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes unanimously. Okay, we're moving on to item number 3. Ms. Bont,
Mayor, this is staff asking for approval of a large-scale site plan consistent with Appendix A, zoning Article 4, Section 2, to construct a new 18,148 square foot community center building, along with associated parking and stormwater retention at the site commonly known as the Dr. Jolie Smith Community Center, with conditions. Dodie Seelig, our planning and zoning manager, has a short presentation for you.
Technology would catch up with me here. There it goes. Okay, so the city is the applicant requesting approval of this large-scale site plan. It's in your Exhibit A in your site, in your agendas. It encompasses 5 parcels, roughly 3.6 acres, known as the Jolie Smith Center. We're intending to build a community center with parking and detention on the northern parcel of the property, where the current baseball field is located. Generally, the property, for anyone who isn't familiar with it, it's the southwest corner of Stone Street in Washington. There's an aerial currently. The property has the playground area and the baseball field at the north end, pool and outside basketball court in the middle, and existing community center at the south side. This screen shows you the 5 parcels involved. At this magnification, the parking appears completely black. I have the next slide zooms in further, but I want to show you all of the properties involved. So this is the proposed building. It's on an angle facing the corner. There would be retention up here right at the corner, an entrance off of Stone Street that is a one-way drop-off pickup area exiting onto Washington. There's handicap parking out in front here This is a covered entry exit area for the building. There's bicycle parking kind of on the corners, sidewalks that connect with the rest of the site. Additional, there's retention here, and across the parking area. As you can see, there's an entrance off of Stone Street with trash receptacle, significant parking. There's handicap closest to the building on this side as well. And then moving down to the south side, that parking extends down with additional, and it ties in to the existing parking down here to the south. Existing pool, basketball court, existing community center. And this, which is existing parking, is the proposed playground area relocation area. This is just an interior of the building for anybody that wasn't kind of already aware. The largest room, obviously, is the gym with bleachers. There's offices. The entrance is here in this side. There's a multi-purpose room with a kitchen off of that and restrooms, general building maintenance facilities, offices for the Brevard Action Team, and then another multi-purpose room on the other side of the entry. So in consistency with our code, all site plans must meet all current applicable code requirements. Staff's reviewed the site plan, determined that there were some criteria related to the code that have not been completely satisfied. However, none of those remaining issues aside from parking substantially impact the design at all of the site plan. So staff is recommending these inconsistencies with the code be satisfied as a condition of final approval with, as I said, the exception of parking. So the site currently has 47 parking spaces. The new layout will remove 24 of those spaces, but add back in 49, which is an increase of 25 spaces. So we would have, instead of 47 parking spaces on the site, we would go up to 75. The inconsistency is stemming from the way those parking spaces, the requirements are calculated. The code requires a community center to provide one space for every 300 square feet of gross floor area. For the swimming pool, the requirement is one space for every 40 square feet of swimming pool surface area. And there is no requirement listed for outdoor basketball courts. So when we add in the new building to the existing site uses, we have 52 spaces for this new building, 11 for the existing, 80 for the pool, for a total of 143 required by code. It's staff's belief that the number of spaces required for the pool is perhaps a little non-realistic, and that itemizing the uses in that fashion is also probably not a practical method of calculating. Visitors to the site are most likely going to use more than one facility before they, depart. So somebody that drives to go to an event maybe at the center would also perhaps go on to use the basketball court or the playground. In addition, because the community center is located in the midst of a residential neighborhood, many of those users will come to the site on foot or by bicycle. So consulted the Institute of Transportation Engineers Parking Generations book, which provides a standard for a recreational community center. It's defined as a standalone building incorporating, as you can see, a number of different but related uses. The standard for this is 3 spaces for every 1,000 square feet of gross floor area, which gives a revised total required of only 85 spaces. As I say, that's parking standard didn't take into account neighborhood location. The studies used buildings that are about twice the size of our community center. And based on that, my feeling is that those studies were based on more auto-dependent locations than what we have. So it's therefore recommendation to from staff to council to approve a waiver in conjunction with this site plan of the required parking spaces from the 143 required by code to 75 provided by the site plan, as being both more realistic of the number of spaces needed as well as the greatest number of spaces possible on site without eliminating other uses. Review of concurrency management found that there's adequate facilities. The consistency with the comprehensive plan, the housing element has a policy related to providing recreation spaces, and the recreation and open space element has one objective and 2 policies related. The proposed site plan was heard at the May 1st, 2019 Planning and Zoning Board meeting. The Planning and Zoning Board recommended approval with conditions and suggestions for consideration by the council. The motion is approval of the site plan for the Dr. Jolie Smith Community Center as depicted on Exhibit A, with following conditions recommended by staff in consideration of the parking alternatives that follow as suggested by the Planning and Zoning Board. The planning criteria was a change of the reference from small-scale site plan to large-scale site plan. In your agenda, you have a number of Public Works grounds comments. However, those have been addressed already, so they are no longer a part of it. And then the parking alternatives were, 3 of them were mentioned at the meeting, potentially removing facilities, specifically the outdoor basketball court, considering altering the flow of traffic on Barbara Jenkins and Stone Streets or potentially Washington Avenue in order to provide on-street parking, and potentially acquiring adjacent vacant lots.
Well, what's the alternative to what? You saying if we have to approve the going to the 140 parking spaces, that would be
Well,
the alternative?
There's 143 required.
Right.
We're providing 75. You can, as a council, waive parking requirements. That's, part of council's options. The board wanted, I hate to speak for them, but the board was essentially saying they would like you to consider, if you haven't already, some other alternatives, and these were the ones that they talked about in the meeting. I'm fairly sure that staff or, has looked at some of those, if not all, but I don't want to speak to all our departments. So.
Gotcha. Mr. City Manager.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of council, the basis for this design, or at least the genesis, was we initially looked at the Wickham Park and the Walter Butler Community Center, and then scaled it down to a neighborhood center. And I'm sitting here looking at Walter Butler, and you clearly have to drive to get to Walter Butler, and I don't see 75 parking spaces.
They don't have it.
So I think that's, and I think Dodie pointed it out previously, is the fact that the ITE doesn't really recognize a neighborhood-based community center where you have a lot of pedestrian activity versus, that's what we want to encourage, people to walk and to ride their bike and participate in outdoor activities. So I don't think, I think it's a reasonable accommodation and recognition of the type of center and the uses and activities contemplated. So I would just add that regarding the parking, and then regard, if there's any wondering why small scale and large scale, essentially if this was not involving city property, and this was a private entity developing this property, and it was private property, it would not require the P&Z or council approval. It's because of the fact that it involves city property. There's a provision put in the code many years ago that if you develop development related to city property, it must go through that Planning and Zoning Board recommendation and then come to City Council. And that goes back to around the same time the City Hall site was, this property was developed. So that's the only reason why, because it essentially is a small scale based on the square footage, but it just follows the large scale process.
And if there's ever a need for additional parking, I know that we have some vacant lots over there. I don't know if they'll be available then, but it's something that we could maybe look into, but yeah, see where you're going. But anyway, Councilman Bovair.
Oh, go ahead, my bad, sorry.
Yeah, I got a question. Previously at the CDBG, we had park improvements at Dr. Jolie Centers Park for $65,000. And over here, we're talking about removing facilities, outdoor, basketball and all that. What's this $65,000 for if we're going to be doing it over here?
No, these are just alternatives. If we wanted to go with, I guess, 100.
Yeah, but they're still going to be doing renovations to the park, aren't they, when they build this new one?
The CDBG funds, we're using current funds, the Section 108 loan, and FY 1920.
But this is good
They have to
point.
be for sticks and bricks, so the CDBG funds would actually be for the construction.
Yeah, but this is going to happen during the construction, not now. We're going to do it with the construction of the new place, right? The 65,000?
Yes.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Is the 75, is that added to the existing parking stalls that we have, or just 75 total?
That was 75, well, there's 49 now.
Right. Yeah.
And then with the redesign, the total site will have 75.
Can you go back to that parking area?
Go back one more, to show the whole overall site.
There.
So the additional parking is, obviously, it's because of the shaded area, it shows up darker, but you see the existing parking being retained.
Yeah, there were maybe 6 or so parking spaces up here originally. There's about 23 across here, and I think there's something close to 18 down here. We're adding all of this, and we would lose this and the few that were up here. And there's 4 parking spaces over here being added.
And all that's handicap up top anyway.
Yeah, there's 4 handicap here and 2 more over here. So there's a total of 6. And then actually, there's 1 down here as well. Oh, and 2 there. So there's quite a few.
Yeah.
I'll wait.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to go ahead and close it to the council and open it to the public, and I do have one card here, was Mr. George Brown, but it is open for public comment, if anyone's like to come in and come up and just fill out a card afterward.
Good evening, council.
Good evening.
Put this up a little bit more. How's that? This is my coach over here. My name is George L. Brown, Jr. I live at 555 West King Street in the beautiful west side of Cocoa. And my property is pretty close to being just across the street from the Jolie. And one of my main concerns that if they do anything there, it does not change any of my zoning. That would be very important to me.
No, it
As you
doesn't.
know, it shouldn't be, but I'm just hoping that it doesn't happen.
It won't.
And my other question was, are we doing away with the ballpark and all?
The baseball field itself?
Yeah,
Yeah, it'll be gone.
it'll all be gone.
The baseball field itself, yes.
Well, that's the actual park. They play football and baseball and everything. That'll all be gone.
Not a Provost Park.
No, this,
No, I'm not talking about Provost Park.
Yeah, the building is placed in the corner where the baseball field, basically where home base is. Imagine that going into the
Right.
outfield. That whole area is gone.
So we're going to lose a nice ballpark.
Yes.
Have any of you folks ever seen it lit up at night?
oh, yeah.
It is really, it's like Yankee Stadium. It's beautiful. But it's not used that much. It's too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're gonna have the outside courts, and you're also the pool is gonna still be there. So,
It's too bad they didn't purchase some of the property across the street, get rid of some of that stuff, and put the center over there and kept our ballpark.
Right.
But that ain't gonna happen. I know there's a lot of money involved.
Well, just so council's aware, Mr. Brown, we actually attempted to acquire additional lands that are contiguous to this and offered to exchange properties with a property owner, but they were not willing to do that.
No dice.
So,
That doesn't make any sense, but,
could you address it? He was concerned about his.
no, there's no proposed, this is a site plan approval. This use, based on a former amendment to the zoning code, is an approved use, and it will not affect your property. There is an existing recreational use there now, and it doesn't affect the use of your property, so this has no bearing or no impact on that. if anything, it probably will bring value to your property in terms of having a community center and having the activity.
He's got the Dunkin' Donuts, he's golden.
Well, I wanted to put in a racetrack, a go-kart racetrack on my property. I think everybody would love that, wouldn't they?
Oh, yeah.
There, George.
Just kidding, just kidding.
I'll be there.
But, okay, I guess that's my main concern. And the other thing is, please continue to go on with our beautiful hotel plans in the downtown area.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
George.
I would love to see that.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you, George.
Thank you.
Next up,
See
we
you at
have
Dunkin's.
Mr. Dennis Childs.
Good evening. My name is Dennis Childs. I live at 2100 North Indian River Drive. And I'm a little concerned about the multi-purpose rooms. If there is a special function going on, depending on the occupancy of those spaces, they could eat up most of the parking and then leave none for people who might want to come and avail themselves of other things. Do we know what the occupancy of those two spaces is?
It's,
The assembly occupancy?
well, no, it's contemplated to be kind of a, youth and senior programming for activities. So you envision the senior program activities occurring during the day, and some of the youth activities occurring in the, after school. So we don't envision that to be an issue. We're trying to accommodate the use of both.
So you won't have an assembly occupancy where you have
Somebody
pairs
could,
and so on?
somebody could,
That'd be about 6 square feet per person. Do you know what the square footage of either of those spaces is?
Not the individual rooms, I have the building as a whole, but
Do you have the floor plan that I could just look at briefly? Maybe we can estimate it.
sorry.
It's a little difficult to tell, but I would imagine you could get 100 people in the larger of the two rooms, which could very easily be 50 cars. So that's my only concern, is that if one of those, even one of them is on, they would be using most of the parking if it were an assembly occupancy situation where they had chairs and a speaker or a show of some kind or that sort of thing. So I think you ought to proceed with caution on this parking. I think it's going to be overstressed at times. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to speak on this item? Yes, ma'am. And could I have you fill a card out afterwards, if you don't mind? You can state your name and address, and then,
Good evening, Mayor,
good evening.
councilmen.
How you doing?
My name is Stephanie Carter Gallen. I'm the owner of Dakotas on US 1, the car wash and the mechanic shop there. I'm concerned about the utilization of the building, number one. And my second concern is why we have to have 3 retention ponds. Why 3? And we have a pool. That's my concern. I'm thinking if we utilize the building, that we put, because to me, the activities, the after-school activities, that don't seem to work in the black community. They don't seem to they occupy it. I think if we put something in there like the Salvation Army type situation in there, where people can utilize it to go pay, to go and get help. Community action team can be placed in there. What's the other one that they have? Any kind of something that helps the community, that draw the older people there, the younger people there that need help. I think that's what that building should be utilized.
All the offices on the left side, that is designed, we worked with the community action team, and that is designed for their purpose to occupy and provide services to the residents.
Okay, just one services, though? Is it kind of,
Well, the community action team is kind of, Nancy, do you want to describe? I mean, it's not just one, a single service that's
I'm familiar
provided.
with that, I'm familiar, but I think it could be utilized with multiple services out of there.
Well,
Right. All of the services that the action team provide they will be relocating there. So that's why there's 8 offices. But they actually had asked us to partner because they can also utilize that multipurpose room. Were very short on space, and so they could hold classes and different things in that multipurpose room. Also, with the county's Parks and Recreation, they'll be holding like summer camp, and PAL and Alliance for Neighborhood Restoration will also be able to, but other nonprofits will be able to rent out and utilize the multipurpose room. You'll also, with the full kitchen, you'll also be able to have activities and events there.
Okay, and my second concern was the 3 retention ponds. I'm concerned about.
do you want to respond to that?
Yes.
I mean, I hear that
I think 3 is a little too much.
Well,
based on some
The stormwater retention ponds, they're not ponds, they're dry retention areas. They're less than a foot deep. If we had eliminated those, we would have had to get more area somewhere else for stormwater retention, and we're already short for parking. We've acquired the one parcel just on the west side for additional stormwater retention. So they're not ponds, they're not going to be wet, except right after a storm. They will have, 6 inches or so of water, and then, it'll soak in, and there won't be standing water there.
Oh, okay.
They're not like,
So after the storm, it's going to really look
They're basically
crazy.
to retain our stormwater runoff
Look crazy
from the facility.
after the
Yeah.
storm,
yeah, they're all dry, they'll be grass most of the time.
most of the time. Okay, so the park is leaving. The basketball court is leaving.
No.
The basketball court is staying, but the park is leaving.
Yeah, just the baseball
Just a
field.
baseball.
That's the only thing.
Okay,
That's it.
okay, that's all.
And the gazebo and the stuff that was on
And
the
the
side.
playground is going to.
Playground being relocated
It's going to be relocated?
on the same location.
basketball court, playground,
that one
and
too,
the
Yeah, the
pool
playground
will
for
all
the
be
children.
refurbished.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the playground's going to move down in here. This is the parking area right next to the existing community center. So the playground would be relocated right here. So the pool stays, the outside basketball, the existing, those are all staying, and then this becomes a playground.
I'm kind of piggybacking on Mr. Brown there. I like the playground better than the basketball. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Any others?
I had a question about the
I'm going to close it to the.
my bad, sorry.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead. This time, I'm going to close it to the public and reopen it up to the council for any additional comments.
The
Councilman Goins.
question I had was the contract with Community Action. Did the county step up and, I guess, allocate that money for the extra square footage that we needed for the building? I know that was a conversation at one time.
Similar to what you just approved earlier, they're putting it in their 2019, 2020 action plan versus they were out of time to do a substantial amendment because in order to move on to the next year, we have to close in our federal system. So they didn't have the time to do that. But they have committed to funding $175,000 in October 1st.
Deputy Mayor Warner.
Yeah, just a quick question about the parking. Jody, have we looked at how the parking is currently used? I know every time I've been over there, unless it was for like a District 1 meeting or some meeting that the city was doing, the parking is not usually heavily utilized because everybody seems to be coming from the neighborhood, especially the kids, and it's usually full of kids. And I know we're trying to make some amenities for seniors now, but I know a lot of those seniors also don't drive. So have we done any studies about the current parking situation there? I mean, is it, other than when we have an event over there, a big event, is it a problem now, do we know? Or the chief, does anybody know?
I'll have to ask the chief. I'm not aware of
Any issues that we currently have?
Yeah.
Okay. Do we know if there's is or will be a bus stop right there, close by?
I'm
There is.
given to understand that there is one already on 520, so the next street up.
Okay, so it's just a block
Yeah.
away? Okay, because,
Yeah, on Washington and.
Okay.
520 next to Dunkin' Donuts.
okay, because I know we do have a lot of seniors who no longer drive, and if they're going to be using public transportation, and some of the kids, I'm sure, would use public transportation to get there, that kind of gives me a little less heartburn about the parking, so, okay.
And that also is the requirement of the action team. They needed to be within a certain distance
Okay.
of a bus stop.
Do we know how much parking they're going to utilize for their staff? Are they going to be taking up 15, 20 spaces?
They have 8 employees.
8, okay. All right, thank you, that's it.
Okay, Councilman Goins.
Well, I know right now that the old Jolie Smith Center didn't have a parking issue because it was already old and antiquated. So a lot of AAU basketball tournaments and other things like that may turn, and say we can't use it because it's just too small. But I just know with this new building, you're going to get a lot of those tournaments coming to Cocoa instead of going to Satellite Beach and Cocoa Beach and other places. So I'm questioning that the parking issue. I don't think it should be a major problem, but I know eventually what's going to happen if it does ever fill up, you're going to have people parking on the side of the road.
Well, Mr. Goins, we have Mr. Brown, who has that whole block right there next to the Jolie Smith Center. I can see him out there lining up people to park on his property and charging a fee, probably. I mean, if that was my lot, I would probably do that.
Right.
I mean, I like what we have. I think that we have, with the additional parking spots, I think that's adequate for now, but I know that if we need to look at additional properties, there is some available land there to do that, but I think we need to move on this. This has been, like a lot of the projects, it's just kind of dragging along, and I know that a lot of folks are ready to move on this. And like I said, if we have a parking issue, we can look for some additional parkings. There's some vacant land over there if we need to. So,
There's no code against street parking over there, is there?
Yeah.
yes.
On
Washington.
Stone.
On Washington.
In Stone, where there's a pedestrian and bike ped lane. I would add for council, and I think the chief can either agree or disagree. I know the PAL tournaments, many times because I know what we've done in the past, is we get the 15, 21 passenger van, and we transport the kids to the various tournaments. So you're not really, it's not every kiddish parent is showing up, and, we're taking the kids to the tournaments when we're going down to Palm Bay or when we went to Titusville, wherever we were in the van, taking them to the tournaments.
They do the same when they come here.
You're correct.
Okay.
With additional parking, I'm just asking, would this change the cost of construction tremendously? Is that contract already locked in for 75 or 140? Is it already done for 75 right now?
Yes, the GMP right now is based on this plan, the guaranteed maximum price. So, putting parking somewhere else would be an extra cost.
Yeah.
That's not in the budget right now.
Okay.
What's the total budget for it, Ed? 4.7?
Yeah, just over $4 million.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
4.4? Okay. 4.6.
Yeah, I just didn't want to.
4.6 million is the
I
total.
just didn't want to take away anything else that we have there right now.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's additional land there. If we need to acquire some for whatever reason, then,
Mr. Brown's property is for
yeah,
sale.
I know.
Give it to him for $1.
He would love that.
Yes, he would.
But anyway, what is the wishes of the council?
Motion to approve.
We got a motion from Deputy Mayor Warner,
Second.
second from Councilman Goin. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Thank you all. And now we're going to move on to council business. First item up is provide city manager and city attorney directions on the Waterfront Advisory Committee.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Actually, Ms. Rogers kind of provided you a little bit of a history. in terms of the request for, or the genesis for the Waterfront Advisory Committee. They actually, the residents appeared before the council back in July. At that time, there was no directive as the CRA was in the middle of updating their plan. They had received direction to update their plan in June related to the waterfront master plan and then the update. So then in November, Mr. Green appeared before the CRA and they presented the petition before the COCO CRA, and we subsequently had done some research as well. Actually, Mr. Green and I met in January, and then on March 13th, the CRA voted in favor of creating a Waterfront Advisory Committee. So we've worked, the attorney plus staff has continued to look at it, and there's really a couple issues that we need to get some guidance and direction from council with regard to the, essentially, I guess, the scope, the frequency of meetings, board compositions, the direction in terms of participation and involvement, and then, so I can go over them specifically. One, scope. Essentially, when we met with Mr. Green, also, the genesis is to focus on the waterfront, so that the committee would be tasked with reviewing projects related to the waterfront and recreational amenities, activities, and opportunities. Envision, the committee being involved in the earlier in the planning and design process, both based on public input and then in presentations and/or by the consultants to staff and the committee, and them providing us, based on public input and their respective expertise, formulating a recommendation to the COCO CRA. And we also would say that the city, I know a couple weeks ago we had a stormwater workshop on stormwater master plan, and there are projects proposed that would impact the waterfront and recreational opportunities and amenities. So we would suggest that they would be involved and engaged in any city or COCO CRA plan or project involving or that could impact the waterfront. We think, they should be a formal recommending body to the CRA and/or the city council. Because they would be subject to the sunshine laws as making those formal recommendations. The meetings, they could be done, and Mr. Green, I think I attached my notes, I know you received them as well, or his notes to our meeting. It could be quarterly and then schedule as needed special meetings, based on projects that are, scheduled to be implemented, and reviewing, those as if, say, like, if plans come up and we get them back from the consultant, and we've had a public workshop, the consultant submits plans to staff for review, we could schedule a public meeting, a special meeting rather, with the Waterfront Advisory Committee, and they could, receive that input and then provide, their feedback, and so we can kind of get down to where they are providing a formal recommendation to either, again, the CRA or City Council. In terms of the composition, and this is, I put a recommendation in here, and it's just a recommendation, a suggestion for discussion and direction. Potentially 7 members, 5 being appointed by City Council, whether it be by individual council appointees in a similar fashion, possibly as maybe the Police Advisory Committee, or the Police Community Relations Advisory Committee, and then 2 by consensus by the CRA. Since this committee would be making a formal recommendation, we think the CRA should have some, kind of skin in the game in appointing members. And the reason why we say there should be, kind of both bodies appointing is because I think it was a statement made, and I think it's very apropos, and I think we repeated a lot, that historic Cocoa Village is just not Cocoa Village, residents and/or businesses. It's the downtown for the entire city. It's every resident in the city, claims Cocoa Village as their downtown. It's where all our major civic and commercial institutions are, and so and cultural. So it just want to point that out. It's something that was raised, and we think it's a valid point. In terms of eligibility for board members, we think since they will be advising and recommending to the CRA, they should kind of generally meet similar CRA board member requirements, especially in light of pending legislation that might be signed into law by the governor, if they're making a recommendation. Again, the last thing I think we have in terms of is the discussion. I think we need to talk about the involvement of the members. I think it merits a discussion. When you're a committee member, how do you participate in the public workshops that maybe are, held for projects, and then subsequently put on your committee hat? Because keeping in mind, if they're subject to sunshine law, whatever the committee, board, whatever it might be, is that we would think, like you all do, when you attend a public workshop, you kind of refrain at that point in time, and you participate, you listen, you hear what's happening, and then you bring that back with you. And that's what we think they should be, your guidance would be to them as well, versus, because it'd be very difficult for somebody to take off their hat, in the public workshop or and then to come into the committee meeting. It's like you kind of want to, again, they're making a formal recommendation to either the CRA or the council. So with that, we're just seeking the city attorney, myself, or staff direction, in terms of creating a resolution for the purposes of creating the Waterfront Advisory Committee.
Okay. Deputy Mayor, you'd like to make some comments, or?
I just, I agree with the city manager over the participating in workshops and then going back as a formal committee. It can get kind of, I think as long as they get really good instruction and have really good guidelines, it can work really well. I like the idea of the CRA or RDA appointing a couple of the members, because even though this body sits as the RDA, we do have 2 additional members of that body who should also get a say in who's on this advisory committee, since they are also going to be advising the downtown RDA. So I think we have a lot of good knowledge in this community, especially about waterfronts and construction, and a lot of people that are involved in the downtown, a lot of people who use the waterfront on a daily basis. And if we need a committee to give them a voice and an opportunity, I have no objection to that.
I'm going to give you the opportunity to come back here. We got 2 cards here. Would you all like to hear from the 2 individuals that submitted cards first, and then we can kind of go from there? And then I'll give you the opportunity to come back if you want to. And first we have Mr. Ed Green. You can come up and state your name and address. And then I think Linda Dolphin wanted to go speak on this item as well. No?
I guess I have the numbers. Can you change the?
Oh, okay.
I'm Ed Green, 104 Riverside Drive, apartment 204 in Cocoa, Florida. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Mr. Convich, Mr. City Attorney, thank you for the opportunity here to talk about this. Mr. Convich, you very well enumerated the history of this activity and where we are. I think from what I'm hearing that this is getting a little bit more complicated than we really need it to be. To Deputy Mayor Warner's comments about the expertise and so forth that we have in the community and specific waterfront knowledge-based skill sets and all that sort of thing. We have it, and it's our sense that the city staff doesn't necessarily have that specific kind of expertise in many cases. So what we're really proposing is not so much a deliberative body or a board that is decision-making or making formal recommendations. I think what more we're looking for is a group of people with the expertise that's required that is absent from staff, that could augment staff and work side by side with staff when something comes up. For instance, you know yourself that when you see something that's fairly technical that you don't have a lot of background, you look at it and you hear the presentation and you don't even know what questions to ask to get you to where you need to go. We're proposing to have people who could look at something along with staff and know what questions to ask, and help to ask the questions and help to be an intermediary between staff and public, staff, and people who are proposing to do something, staff and consultants, whatever, and help guide a productive discussion, help develop a good plan, and let staff, based on that information, be the ones to make the recommendations. This committee, council, whatever you want to call it, please not a board, since they wouldn't be making formal recommendations and wouldn't be making decisions, theoretically would be outside of the scope of the Sunshine Law. And the benefit to the city is that that allows this kind of activity to be nimble, to be called in on short notice, to say, we have a meeting coming up next Tuesday to discuss this, that, or the other thing, and what members can you provide that have that expertise that can help us sort through that, sit in with staff, let staff hear it, let staff make the decisions, let staff make the recommendations to council, let council go and move forward. So I think we're making it more complicated than we really need to. We're not looking for this to be burdensome on city staff. We're looking for it to be a way to leverage what's in the community, to be a help, to be a resource. And I think that there's a way to structure that, and we would welcome the Cocoa Village Neighborhood Coalition, who's advocating this, to have further meetings with Mr. Tukanich or anybody else that you deem important to work out some of these details and to do it sooner rather than later, because, you know, the last time we talked was January, and here we are in May. So if I would ask council to give direction, the direction I would ask is to let's get together and work on this so that we can come up with a quicker resolution. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you. Okay.
So, just, Mr. Green, Mr. Marino can ask a question? Yeah. So you are essentially more so seeking for an advisory role to, an advisory role to staff versus making an advisory role to the council or the CRA.
Right, and if I'm reading this correctly, that would obviate the need to apply Sunshine Law restrictions, because the staff would then be able to, this council, this group would then be able to curate what we're hearing from public, gather information, filter information, curate information, put it in terms of something that the experts in whatever particular field, if we're talking about something that has to do with putting oyster beds in the waterfront, for instance, and we had a member who had that expertise, could provide that expertise, and it would mean that the staff wouldn't have to go out and find research. The research would be there. The resource would be there. If we're talking about what's the best way for boaters to access and use a T-dock, we would have boaters who could tell you, this is how we do it, this is what we need, this works for us, and that doesn't.
So basically, you're saying utilizing the resources we have in our community, going back to the staff, because coming to council would involve sunshine issues, and so basically you take that expertise, you sit down with the staff, you guys would talk about it, and then.
Yeah, I just want to be cautious, many times when we're designing these projects, like take the promenade or something to the effect, that engineer is signing and sealing those documents, or they're making a professional recommendation. So we just got to be, we're not going to be supplanting, or it would be augmenting the existing process that we have in terms of that has worked well. I mean, I could go over the timeline. I mean, I know there's some of this is born out of and my apologies, but the perceived, not sense of being the staff or the city or the CRA moving in a rapid fashion, post-Hurricane Irma. I mean, it happened in September of 2017. In November, after spending a month or so, 6 weeks of working on recovery, got together and said, we're going to do the waterfront. We engaged ISS. We also worked on bringing in waterfront, our consultant to kind of revisit the waterfront, and that's where we got the waterfront master plan. There was public workshops held, 2 between January and February. Then there was a general workshop or presentation before the CRA by the consultant at the April 2018 meeting. And staff from that point began meeting with Army Corps of Engineers. We were meeting with FEMA regarding, what would be qualified based on that plan, that in terms of the damage to the waterfront, related to the shoreline, the T-docks, the day slips, the promenade, as well, since the CRA already had projects contemplated and were in permitting, or at least were in design. So then April and June, staff's meeting, and in June, also the COCO CRA then approved the actual waterfront master plan update and directed staff, because keep in mind, some of the projects that were contemplated in that were not in the prior CRA plan. So until a project is actually in a CRA plan, a capital project, you cannot expend funds on that. So we had to wait for that process to catch up, and we amended the CRA plan. That took from July to, I think, that probably took longer than we anticipated, because we didn't use the consultants. We did staff, a lot of that, and that, I think we adopted that in October, the second meeting in October. And then early November, we held the first public workshop on the promenade. We already had, well, actually, there was the promenade, T-docks, and the day slips, and of which the promenade generated most of the discussion. I did not attend, but I know Matt and other staff did, in my absence. So I just want to, staff is not opposed to the idea of working with experts, but I think the comments that were made at the CRA meeting by members, that making sure that it's representative of the entire city, recognize that the historic Cocoa Village and the waterfront doesn't just belong to those that abut the waterfront and or live in or reside or do business in Cocoa Village, but the entire city. That would just be one of the things that I think we should make sure that we're accommodating. And
Because if you're talking, this group would be self-appointed.
that would be a concern. And then the other issue, like I said, going back to that, I get that there's expertise out there, but we just, when you're submitting documents, we have, it's like, when you're submitting plans and or we either bring the experts in if we don't have it, or I've got 2 PEs, on staff. I mean, all of our directors are, I think, highly qualified and certified in their respective areas. And but yes, I don't disagree. There are times like we had to bring in somebody for the hotel to help us frame the issue related to the hotel and the discussion on height and the perception or the reality versus perception, and then have that community discussion, what is appropriate, what's not appropriate, and it resulted in something I think that was different than others thought.
I have a question, Mr. Mayor. What I'm hearing Mr. Green say, and what I'm hearing, and maybe Mrs. Koss has a better understanding because she served on that board and I never have, it's almost like the Utilities Advisory Board. I mean, the Utilities Advisory Board deals mainly with staff. I don't ever remember the Utilities Advisory Board coming in here in front of the council and giving, any recommendation they have always comes through staff, but they deal with staff. So what I'm hearing is...
Yet they're not able to develop their ideas because they live under sunshine, so...
Yeah, but because they do make recommendations to the council as they're written, as their rules are written. But if this was a group that was going to deal with staff like the Utilities Advisory Board does, but they're not making recommendations to council, their recommendations are staying at the staff level, and they're not coming to us, then do they have to fall under the sunshine law?
It's a question I think the attorney needs to probably look into. I mean, again, I think it's very meritorious because, yes, I mean, I'm a kayaker, I'm a fisher, so I kind of, there are some things like, I know what I would like, and there's other people that bring other expertise to the table that maybe the end users, and maybe all of staff doesn't have all those, and I think that's kind of where he's going when you go back and you look at, boaters, recreational users, merchants, related to the economic impacts and safety entities such as, water safety, public safety. We've had several people come in that reside in our community that bring that expertise as well.
I'm just thinking if we modeled it like the Utilities
Utilities Advisory Board and just took out that component of being a body recommending to council and just left it at the staff level, we could still follow the same rules like we do with Utilities Advisory and make appointments and all that stuff. But just, the staff would never come to us and say, this is what this board recommends, that everything would be filtered through the staff, and it would actually be the staff's recommendations that we would hear after the staff dealt with this group and this committee. I understand their concern, having sat on boards and committees, that, following the law, and it doesn't give you an opportunity to call your neighbor and go, hey, I just thought of this, what do you think, and have that interaction. I, a lot of times, get stuff up here where I'm depending on staff, or I'm busy looking for people in the community that can explain stuff to me that I don't understand. Because staff, being engineers, they cannot always explain stuff in a way that resonates with me. So I often need somebody else. And I would like even just to have a list of people in the community that had an expertise that I could pick up the phone and call before I have to make a decision, that I could deal with directly, not through the staff, and say, hey, Ed, I have a question about this. Can you help me find the answer to this? I would really appreciate that personally. So, maybe that's what we do. If we just put together a list of these experts that are willing to answer council questions individually and directly.
That's the spirit of what we're suggesting, that, that resource becomes available without every time having to reinvent the wheel and go out and find out, who can we get this time? When you get what you think is getting very close to a finished product, that would be the time to have another seat at the table for this type of person to look at it, and you can put it on the table and say, this is what we think we're going to do here. What are we missing? From your perspective, what questions didn't we ask? What don't we understand about this? What are your concerns about what would prevent this from working, so that when you go with your recommendation, or when you go to the public workshop, or you go to whatever venue it is, you have a more finished product that's more ready for prime time, that is less likely to get kicked back or questioned or reworked at later stages. You get that into the ground floor, you get it in early, you get those questions answered, and you come out with a better product to present at board, at council, at workshops, at whatever.
This is a discussion that can go on for hours, so let Councilwoman Koss say what she has to say, and then we'll go to the city attorney and get his take on it.
The reason I asked that the agenda be rearranged, that we do this first, was I realized, first of all, I kind of thought we had given direction. I thought we were full steam ahead, and I remember specifically noting that, we needed representation from the community, as well as we needed a lagoon advocate.
Ma'am, it was the COCO CRA.
Okay.
You actually gave because I watched all the meetings.
Okay.
It was the COCO CRA that said, yes, we want to create.
And I was just lamenting the fact that we didn't have a body together because of the next agenda item, which I feel, we're being forced into. It's urgent to make a decision when I don't think it's had as many eyes on it, as much public opinion on it as I would have liked. So, I don't know, I'm a little jealous because, I feel like I knocked my head against the wall for several years with a background, a master's in environmental management, 30 years in the water environment, and to get anybody to listen to me at all. But if you can get somebody to listen to you, I feel like there is a lot of, sometimes it feels like passive resistance, and I don't know how to resolve all that. I think as council people, we have responsibility as well. Like, I should have really been on it more after I thought we gave direction at the CRA and really pushed more. There are a lot of things that have come up in the last couple of months. But that was one of the reasons I talked about the minutes earlier. I'm just really going to stay on top. If anybody gets up at one of these meetings, I'm going to make sure that there's some follow-up, one way or another.
But
anyway, that's all.
Just remember, it's two different hats, so.
Okay.
But thank you there, Mr. Green. And Mr. City Attorney, would you like to throw anything in there or add anything?
I could go ahead and throw my 2 cents in. I mean, I guess the agenda item was set up in a way that, I guess we presumed that we were talking about establishing some committee that would make a recommendation. What I'm hearing Mr. Green say it's slightly, I think it's different. We always have to be careful with the Sunshine Law. If the council's going to create some group that's going to be responsible for holding meetings and they're part of the decision-making process, 99% of the time, it's going to be subject to the Sunshine Law unless they fit through the eye of a needle and they purely act as a fact-finding group, all right, as part of the decision-making process. But what I hear Mr. Green say is maybe slightly different in that what the city may need is like a water, I'll call it, for lack of a better term, a waterfront volunteer program where certain individuals that have passion regarding the waterfront, that have certain types of expertise, will volunteer their services to provide input at the staff level to try to create a better product and help, and help the city with specific matters regarding the waterfront. It's really kind of annoying, but we did something like that, if you recall. I don't know, they're trying to work. We did something like that. When we rewrote. Not me. It's worse.
I think it's the mic's off.
There it is. Sorry about that one. I was trying to. Hi. Remember when we created one-of-a-kind set of rules for docking and regulations for the waterfront, and we relied heavily on one individual, Brad Whitmore, right? And he provided a wealth of expertise, and frankly, the product that we created, that ordinance, wouldn't be half as good without his advice. But he volunteered his time. I met with him on numerous occasions. He reviewed draft ordinances to say, does this make sense from a docking standpoint? And he helped create a much better product that the council ultimately adopted. That kind of approach, that's not subject to the Sunshine Law. So if somebody wants to volunteer their expertise and you want to use it as part of the process, maybe you create a volunteer program.
That's exactly the way we're envisioning this.
Is that what the civic program is?
I'm sorry?
Civic program?
The civic program, I just, in my notes, I mentioned that the city already has a situation where people who have expertise can volunteer to come in and work for the city on a volunteer basis and do the sort of thing. You have interns that you bring in, unpaid interns who, admittedly, the reason they do that is somewhat different. They're not providing expertise, they're gaining expertise, but it's still the same thing. It's outside people who are coming in and participating in a quasi-staff situation on a voluntary basis. The civic program, VCOPS, if you want to talk about that, these are people who volunteer to come in and fulfill a function. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about a group of people who will volunteer to come in and fulfill a function that augments staff.
We got you. Mr. City Manager, you wanted to make some comments?
No, not neither.
Do you think this is maybe you and Mr. Green
And
sit
if-
down?
And if you all
I think
could,
we have a
please
little
turn
bit.
your lights on because we're like bouncing all over the place, so.
Get with the city attorney and then get with Mr. Green. Just, I think we have a better understanding. And I was relying more on the recent letter where it talked about some formal recommendations. Maybe that's where we went a little bit astray, so.
Okay, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
I think we've got something here, we're all on the same page now, and I just think this is something between the city manager and Mr. Green and the city attorney, we can come up with, like he said, something similar to our VCOP program where it's a volunteer program and somebody in City Hall has a list of these volunteers. And I know at one time Carrie had a volunteer who used to come into the clerk's office and help out, augment her staff and what they did in the clerk's office. So, the more volunteers we can get helping out staff in City Hall, the better for all of us.
Thank you.
So we want to just table this and then just have you guys have a meeting of the minds and.
Yeah.
And, okay.
Sounds good to me.
That's it.
Yeah, make a motion that we table it until further notice.
We got a motion from Councilman Bover,
I'll second that.
second from Deputy Mayor Warner. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes unanimously. Mr. City Manager, you have your marching orders there. Okay, item number 2, request council direction for the final design and concept of the promenade and overlook project. Mr. Public Works Director.
Yes, Mayor and Council, we have, based on the April 24th meeting, direction from council to bring some other concepts for the promenade back. We have Tom Ville with Infrastructure Solutions, who will provide an overview of some different options. And after that, I'd like to turn it over to the city manager and then open it up to council after that.
Thank you, sir.
So, with no further ado, Mr. Ville.
Okay.
I didn't talk long enough.
Okay, it's loaded on my screen, but I'm not sure why you're not seeing it. Matt?
Oh, here comes IT.
Oh, here we come.
Well, it's not PowerPoint, it's PDF. Right.
That's probably about the second one here.
Thank you.
Tom, the right toolbar, you see that arrow going right? Just hit that, go down further, midway to now to the left of that toolbar. See, there's a little arrow right there.
There's a full
That'll collapse
display.
that.
That
Oh, it
won't
should.
come up.
It should collapse it.
No, it's not responding.
Collapse it.
He's got something hanging up in here.
It's making it ding sound.
Yeah.
Well, like, we're going to have to invest some money in our sound systems and our computer system.
Sound system's getting worse. And I have to tell you, when you're on the phone, the only person you can hear talking is you, Mr. Mayor. You can't hear anybody else on the council talk. I don't know why that is, but.
There you go. There you go.
There it is.
All
Thank
right.
you.
All right, Jason.
Okay, so, good evening. Apologize for the delay. At the last, or April 24th City Council meeting, we considered a final concept for the reconstructed promenade at Riverfront Park. Following the discussion and public comment, council requested that we prepare a concept plan for the promenade with a knee wall in place of the stainless steel cable railing. In addition, following that meeting, several members of the public reached out to city staff offering further comment, recommendations. Some very good comments, some really thoughtful input. So to assist city in considering these comments, making decisions about the promenade. We also prepared a concept with the cast stone balustrades in place of the stainless steel cable railing, because that was some input received. And then we prepared a memo to address the main themes in the public comment. So those were the sign wall, the concept of putting riprap in front of the seawall, replacing the 2 square overlooks with a single arc-shaped overlook in place of the 2 squares, stressing the need to reflect the design cues from the park. And it's always been our intent to reflect those design cues, but when we updated these renderings, spent a little more time on the detail of them to make sure that was communicated a little more strongly. And then there were comments about the plantings that would be used and also window views through the parks. So as I go through this, I'll address some of those comments, and at the end, I'll address the rest of them just to give you some additional thought for your consideration. So the knee wall concept. The concept was to construct an 18-inch high concrete wall along the water's edge in place of the 42-inch high stainless steel cable railing. The key design issue in doing this is that the Florida Building Code requires a guard, a railing 42 inches high, along any open-sided walking surface when they're within 36 inches of the edge of a drop-off that would drop 30 inches or more. So this was an important, very important interpretation, so I didn't just rely on my own. I met with Val Perez, the city building official. He's the ultimate interpreter of the building code in the city of Cocoa, and he indicated that a 42-inch guard would be required if a walking surface is located within 36 inches of that drop-off. So to satisfy that building code requirement in the knee wall concept, we included a 36-inch wide landscape strip to provide a separation from walking surface to that knee wall and the drop-off below. And just so you know, the drop-off, right now, that paver walking surface is about 16 inches higher than the top of the bulk seawall. And then it's about another, roughly about 4 feet to the water surface, typical water surface, and about 2.5 to 3 feet to the sea bottom along the wall. So that was a key design issue that we were addressing in our concept. So the knee wall concept, you can see here, there's the large concept you can see through both overlooks that were proposed with a planting strip in front. We kept that middle sign, but we will discuss this later in the presentation. And then you can see there are 2 other views, one down the walkway and then one looking out over the platform. And I've got close-ups of both of those. So this is a view looking down the walkway. What we did, you have your knee wall. Architecturally, it mimics the entrance signs to Riverfront Park. And then in front of that, you see a 3-foot wide landscape area that you would have, and then you could have walking surface. You're left with a small, approximately 3-foot area between that curb of the landscaped area and the existing paver, ribbon curb on it. We showed it as sod. You could certainly put concrete in, but I know there was a strong emphasis about more green space in here, so we showed it as sod. You could easily change that. On the overlooks, we did, based on conversations at that last meeting, kept the stainless steel cable railing on the overlooks because we have to have that 42-inch where people would be walking right up to the edge of the drop-off. This next view is a little higher, just gives you a different perspective of those planting beds and of the overlooks. We just showed representative plantings in there. The plant type would be finalized or in final design. The second option was to construct a 42-inch cast stone balustrade railing in place of the stainless steel railing. So cast stone balustrades, you can see one to the right, that's actually from Memorial Park in Jacksonville. They're a very strong architectural feature, historic style architectural feature. So in this concept, we simply replaced the stainless steel railing with the balustrade railings. These are cast out of a special mix of cement. They have reinforcing within them. One issue with the balustrades, Memorial Park is a old park constructed in the 1920s, so their balustrades do not meet current code. Current code of the building code, the space in between the balustrades has to be small enough that you cannot pass a 4-inch sphere through them. So you'll see that a little different when you see our examples. In addition, Jacksonville's balustrades, the historic ones were 36 inches high. But again, code requires them to be 42 inches high now. So here's some renderings of the balustrade wall. In this rendering, same 3 views from the water, looking down at the entirety of the promenade, and then looking down the promenade walkway, and then another view of the overlooks. In this option, we used the balustrade since you were using them on the overlooks as well. And then here's another close-up picture of them. You can see the closeness of the balustrades. I have a picture later on to try to give you a perspective. The one thing they do, because they have to be so close together, is you have more of an obstruction to your view of the water. And the other thing that will happen is if you do get water coming up onto the park, they do restrict the water. So you have a bigger surface area that's going to absorb the force of the water on the balustrades. This is another view, again, just a little higher of the overlooks. We went ahead and just, as I said, we were updating some of the design features just to add a little more detail to better communicate that we're matching the design cues of the park. So this is the stainless steel railing. Again, it's a stainless steel cable railing, 42 inches high, satisfying all the code requirements. Here's a view along the walkway, the existing paver walkway. Here's another view looking over the overlooks. Okay. The sign wall was a topic of discussion last time, and there will need to be a decision made as to whether to have the sign wall or not. There was some discussion whether you wanted it or not. This is a view from the sea wall, or I'm sorry, the water side with the knee wall option. So it gives you a closer up look of the knee wall option from the sea. This is that sign wall proposed from the mainland side. The area between the existing walkway and the sign can be landscaped. There could be modifications to it if you decide that's what you want on it. So just trying to give you a comparison of the different options. This is the view down the existing walkway of all 3 options. The top option being the knee wall, second option being the stainless steel railing, and the third option being the cast stone balustrades. And then this is another comparison view, and this is approximating the view angle you would have sitting in a bench along the existing walkway, one of the existing benches. So you can see the top with the balustrades, bottom left corner being the stainless steel cable railing, and then bottom right corner being the knee wall. Since we finished these options, we went through and updated the entire cost because there's a change in the railing cost for each of these options, but there's also other changes in the promenade. So to give you the best information to make decisions by, we've estimated the construction cost of the stainless steel cable railing at just under $850,000. the promenade with the knee wall at about $950,000, and the cast stone balustrade railing at about $890,000. Those are the estimated contracted construction costs. They don't account the FEMA costs or FEMA reimbursement with any of those. I also wanted to just raise, for your information, the maintenance compared to your previous wood dock, what you would expect. The stainless steel cable railing and the cast stone balustrade railing, you will have slightly more maintenance because you're going to be maintaining these landscape beds more often. Stainless steel cable railing, you're never painting. About every 5 years, you're taking a solvent and wiping it down, and that should be it. The cast stone balustrade railing, I would expect every 5 years or so, you may go through and pressure wash the railing, but you would not be painting that railing. I mean, you can, but we would not recommend that you would use a balustrade that would require painting or any of that kind of maintenance. The knee wall would require the highest maintenance, a little bit higher than the other two, and that comes from, one, you've got this long linear landscape bed, the whole length that you'd be maintaining. And then the knee wall would have, matching the rest of the park, a stucco type finish on it, so that you would have to periodically paint that wall. So those would be some of the major issues where you would have a little bit more maintenance cost. So the additional public comment and recommendations, as I said, we received some excellent comment and some really thoughtful input. One issue was the idea of putting riprap in front of the seawall. You can do that. You can do it at any time. Nothing in this project would keep you from doing it in the future. It will require permitting by the St. Johns River Water Management District and the Army Corps of Engineers, because you're now putting fill into the lagoon. I obviously can't speak for them. They can put additional permit requirements on it or things like that. I don't see any reason why you would not get those permits. They may put some requirements on you, but it is an additional process you have to go through for it. Some other design considerations, there's always been about the promenade, the discussion of getting close to the water and people needing to interact with the water. If we put riprap in front of the seawall, it will push the water level further away. You will have about 8 foot of riprap before you get to the water level, 8 foot horizontally. So if I'm walking out onto an overlook, that first 8 foot is going to be over riprap. And then the next 6 foot, there'll be riprap underwater before I get to actually where I'm over the sea bottom. The second thing, and it's just something to be aware of, riprap on the edge like that, floating debris just has a habit of getting caught up in that riprap on the end. It just lands on it, sticks there, so it would require a periodic cleaning of that. And then lastly, if you put riprap in front of the seawall, there are a handful of stormwater outlet pipes so that come through the seawall at different locations. You can't put riprap in front of those unless you were to extend the pipe, and then you're into a much more complicated project. So you would have these small openings in riprap, like 3 foot, 4 foot openings in the riprap to allow that stormwater to come out. The second item was the concept of an arc-shaped overlook in place of the 2 square overlooks, something more centralized in the vicinity of the fountain. You can do it. There's nothing prohibiting that. That would require some additional permitting. And the footprint change would raise that level of permitting. Right now, we're going back replacing existing gazebos in the exact same footprint. We're upgrading the materials to something more resilient. So as far as getting permits, it's more, it's just easier. And then I'm not sure how that would affect your FEMA funding to change from replacing structures damaged to a new structure, but it can certainly be done.
Same square feet, right?
What was that?
Same square feet.
It can be the same square feet, but they'll look at the exact same footprint. So for instance, I just went through this with the T-docks and the day slips. Now we're doing floating day slips so that they're more resilient and out. They are not in the exact same footprint. So I had to go through a couple of extra steps with Army Corps, and we're having to go through those with St. John's as well. So it's just a consideration. Again, you can get it permitted. It will take you a little longer. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't. And then lastly, there were some comments regarding the plantings and window views through the parks. So for our concepts, we're not selecting plantings yet in those planting beds. That's another step. What we're trying to determine right now is the extent and the location of the plantings between that existing paver area and the new wall railings. As far as shade trees, they can be done at any time. We don't recommend the placement of trees between the existing pavers and the back of the seawall. One of them is visual, but the other thing is planting trees in there and beginning root growth in the area of that old seawall is just not something I would encourage at this time. You can place shade trees on the other side, on the west side of that existing pavers to provide shade for the benches or anything. That can be done at any time. Our limit, when we've always talked about reconstruction of the promenade, was the existing paver walkway. So we weren't going to the west side of that. Really, the intent from the start was not to disturb or replace or impact that existing paver walkway. We were just repairing, or it was at least initiated based on repair of that storm damage in the dock. So, so I will open it up to any comments or questions.
Thank you, sir. We have, let me get Ms. Dolphin up here first, and then we'll let you guys come in after she.
Hi, everybody. I'm Linda Dolphin, 2100 North Indian River Drive, and just had some questions based upon some concerns about FEMA maybe not paying for the knee wall. The knee wall is my favorite design. I think it opens it up. I think it's beautiful. And we had, my husband and I were discussing some opportunities to overcome some concerns that we're hearing behind the scenes. So maybe we should come back if the council or city staff is going to say that the knee wall isn't feasible. That's what we're hearing. So rather than discuss it in advance, if it is feasible, I'm for it. If there's reasons that FEMA's not going to fund it, which we saw in some of the information, then why don't we get that out in the open first?
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, man.
The wall is technically feasible to be constructed. There's no question about it. I haven't been dealing with the FEMA end of it. I know there were discussions with FEMA, but I think Matt can.
Assistant City Manager.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Actually, ever since Hurricane Irma, going back probably a year and a half now, city staff has had weekly meetings with FEMA. And one thing that, we've learned with this hurricane and others is that, there's no commitment to anything until you receive the money. They have numerous checklists that different groups that we don't even see go through to validate if the project is meritorious for FEMA reimbursement. These particular projects all along our waterfront that were damaged, I think it's important that, we keep in mind that these are replacement projects. The T-Dock and Day Slip project, that's actually, there were contemplated extensions with that at the time of the hurricane. This particular project, what we're talking about is essentially rebuilding an amenity that was lost. And what we had previously was a wooden boardwalk with wooden railing. And the desire was to bring that back onto the seawall to make it more resilient. And working with FEMA, working with certain design elements to make sure that that could happen, as well as within the constraints of the timelines that we have for the various grants with FEMA and FIND. And so we did some analysis. Tom had come back with some cost estimates updated for each of these particular options. I can say right off the bat that there isn't a single option that isn't feasible for the city. Essentially, if you exclude in the itemized costs the individual pieces that were not present with the wooden walkway, if you exclude those costs, and assuming FEMA reimbursement at 75%, and that was verified as late as this morning with the rep that was here on site. Of course, that's the best estimate they can provide us at this time, and that's not including any mitigation or anything else. But if we're looking for a bottom line cost that the city should consider with these projects, the first option with the stainless steel cable railing, the city's general fund would be looking at $183,047.13. Now, to add back in those planter beds, the sign wall, landscaping, irrigation, those items that weren't previously present, either the CRA or the general fund would have to fund those additional pieces, and that's approximately $94,000. That's for the first option. Second option, the cast balustrades, the general fund, excluding those additional items, the general fund would be looking at $193,008.08 with essentially the same amount from the CRA or the general fund, in addition to bringing those amenities, $94,200. The third option, the knee wall option, excluding the items that were not present in the previous project, the city's general fund could be looking at $209,853.01, and then the CRA or the general fund picking up an additional $88,518.75 to complete those planter beds and some of the other amenities that weren't previously present. And so those are the best numbers we have to work off of. I think based on what the city has budgeted and what we have available for grant funding, we believe that to be feasible financially for the city for each of the three options. Again, those numbers may change. FEMA did indicate that the knee wall design and particularly the knee wall design is not something that they would move towards their mitigation program. We're actually unsure of what that amount would be from mitigation. They have certain thresholds, but each project is taken individually and assessed by their team, and then a percentage is allocated based on the design of the project. But we do have documentation from FEMA that option would not be eligible under their mitigation program in addition to their reimbursement program.
Can I ask why?
Yes, because the specific statement from their mitigation folks was that they've observed many impacts from hurricanes up and down the U.S. coast, and the survivability of those structures hasn't been good. The steel railing systems have been good, and that is what they are recommending. I do believe, Tom, do you have some images from Hurricane Irma, I think from Jacksonville on the balustrades?
I do for the balustrade.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to, for council, I want to just clarify that when we say the CRA versus the general fund, this project emanates from the Waterfront Master Plan. So those enhancements would be something that the CRA would have to make a decision on, similar to they did with the T-Docks and the boardwalk. So if they don't, because I don't think they were contemplating that, they were contemplating in the Waterfront Master Plan update, the railing, but so we would still have to go back to the CRA as well. Just to clarify that we're not trying to push an expense off on the CRA. Yeah. This project emanates and began with the redevelopment agency doing the public workshops and including in the redevelopment plan.
Okay.
Do the images?
Yeah.
Just, I was looking through pictures for the park. This was actually Memorial Park in Jacksonville following Irma. Now, these are 100-year-old concrete or cast balustrades, so they are much older. You would not expect newly constructed to respond this way. However, they don't pass water through the same way, so you would expect some damage, or they're more susceptible to damage. As far as the knee wall, we would do everything we could to design it to withstand those kind of forces. One of the things I've had a conversation with a structural engineer about is a lot of times those walls are constructed of block. They're filled. They're filled block. They're reinforced concrete filled block. We would not do that. We have to construct a retaining wall anyway because we have to raise the grade about 16 inches above where it sits now. So as part of a cast-in-place concrete retaining wall, we would cast in place the knee wall. So it would be reinforced concrete, and so I think it would be much better at withstanding impacts like that. Now, you'll have a precast top on it typically connected to it, and you could suffer some damage like that. But I would be more concerned about the piers, and those would be the biggest things that we would focus on in the design and actually the knee wall. The piers, we have to be very careful about how we design.
Any other?
Well, yeah, so what is the fate of the 9 lanterns and the 5 mature Bismarck trees? The Bismarck trees that are on, what would they be, on the south end?
Yep.
Close to St. Mark's, that actually held the ground in pretty tight, so they didn't have the erosion during the storm. Are those are goners, right?
Trees.
The Bismarck trees, 5 mature.
Between the walkway, and
Yes.
we would recommend they be relocated.
Okay. And they can be, as mature as they are, they can be relocated. That has to be an expense.
Yeah, I would have to discuss more with an
Yeah.
arborist.
And the
details of
lanterns?
the location. The lanterns can all be relocated.
One thing to consider with the Bismarcks is typically when you replant a tree, they'll bring, usually a spade in, and there are structures back there for the tieback for that bulkhead wall. So we would have to consider what structures are under the ground there before we tried that. So they are pretty large trees.
Yeah, they're probably really hard to move, I would imagine. But they did hold in the ground. You didn't have erosion on that side.
Any other comments?
I do have a couple questions, Mr. Mayor. On the knee wall, we get a hurricane and water washes over the knee wall. Are there cut-throughs to allow that water to go back out, or is that water just stuck there?
No, we'll have to allow drainage back through the wall in the design for that. Drainage from the system.
Okay. So on the construction of the knee wall, if I'm standing on the knee wall, because we're fooling ourselves if we think people aren't going to stand on the knee wall, especially during the 4th of July, if I'm standing on that knee wall and I fall, how far is my drop before I hit water?
From the top of the knee wall, you would drop about 7 feet.
Okay.
7 feet before you hit water,
Okay, and then the water I'm hitting is about 3 foot deep?
about 3 foot deep.
Okay, and it's river bottom there, it's not rock?
It is river bottom there. That, we had discussion at the last meeting, because I know there are people who refer to it as a knee wall, a sitting wall, those things. It can't be a sitting wall. There can't be anything to encourage people onto those walls.
You don't need to encourage them, they're going to be on there on the 4th.
I know, and it's a real concern.
Well, that's the purpose of putting the planters there, right?
Well, it's not going to, yeah, we end up replacing, as I'm sure it'll tell everybody after Mardi Gras and 4th of July, people have no compunction about standing in the middle of planting beds to watch the fireworks, or when they're celebrating, or when there's a concert. People will stand on top of the plants. That's just what they do. So they're not going to stop from standing on the knee wall if they've had a little bit to drink and they're trying to see a concert, or they're trying to watch the fireworks. We have knee walls all over the state, and it happens all the time. But my concern is the water flow. When water washes over that, where it's going to go, is it going to cause erosion of the rest of the infrastructure along there? I don't want to see that happen. And I also I mean, I thought the whole concept when we started this was to, get the public closer to the water, because we all know we have a, a lagoon issue. And to me, personally, the easiest way to get people interested in what happens to the lagoon is to get them up close so they can see what's going on in the lagoon, that they can look down and see the trash, that they can see what's happening with the water. So now we're moving them back 3 feet to where they can't really look over and see unless they go out on one of these little outcroppings. So you're kind of, to me, taking away the whole concept of getting the public closer to the water. But the balustrade is the only one I have an objection to, because I'm short, and if I'm sitting on a bench, I can't see the water through that balustrade. So that, to me, that's out. It's beautiful, but I can't see the water, so that totally cuts me off from the water. Unless I walk right up to it and look over, I'm not gonna see the water. So, and at 42 inches, it's already to my chin, so that's, an issue for me. I had the same problem in New York. I couldn't even see the memorial because I wasn't tall enough. So children are not going to be satisfied without climbing up and jumping over to see, because they're not going to be able to see the water either. And you're right, it's got to be close enough together they can't stick their little heads through it. So, I mean, to me, that just takes out the total view. So the other two I'm fine with. I just don't like the idea of moving the public back basically 6 feet from the water, and now I have to, with the wooden overlooks, I could actually stand on top of the water and actually see the water. I could look through and see the water underneath. I felt like I was closer to the river. This just removes me from the river. I might as well go down to McFarland Park and see the river there, or at the end of Dixon Boulevard. Oh, no, the city owns property there. We're allowed to go. Just the removal, that's the only problem I have. It's beautiful, I love the way it looks, but just removing the ability to get close to the water is my biggest concern. But that's all I have to say. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Councilwoman Cost.
Yeah, boy. I'll tell you, I guess it's the stainless, what is the fencing called? Stainless?
Stainless steel cable rail.
Yeah, the cable, okay. I'm absolutely okay with the cable, with the T-docks, and in all the places where it really serves a great function. The promenade is such a different story. The promenade is like the heart of the village. It's the place that you can just stroll, you can feel the wind, you can enjoy the water. And I'll tell you, when I look at that, if there were, it doesn't have barbed wire on, but if it did, it could easily, be a prison fence. And I know it's really popular because I've been visiting, I've been doing day trips, and I know they're doing it all over the place. So I guess this is what FEMA's sticking us with. Whereas, in some places in the country, you can still go and see the projects that were created after World War II or, after the Depression, and they're beautiful. This does not strike me as beautiful.
Could I ask a quick question, Mrs. Cost? Do you think that there is a way to use that concept but make it look better, like maybe with some wrought iron or some cutout design, or maybe some fancier poles or a fancier railing or something to still use the cable but take away?
It'd be great to come up with something creative that would distinguish it, that would make it.
That's sort of what was presented before, in a sense.
I mean, I don't have so much trouble with the cable as I do just the plain ugly poles. If those had a better design, or, or the railing was a nicer design and it doesn't look so utilitarian and prisonish, and
I mean, it's just on the promenade.
I can tell you in our design, there are other railings you can use, stainless steel railings you can use that have different architectural shape. They become more substantial and a bigger visual impact when you're looking at them. This was an attempt to make it as minimal as possible. We discussed wrought iron all the way back at that November meeting. There are a lot of very ornate wrought iron. Wrought iron on the edge of the river is going to require a tremendous amount of maintenance. It's going to constantly have to be painted and touched up.
These poles are what, stainless or,
316 stainless steel.
but is there any reason why they can't have some design elements to them? Can't you take stainless and make it look like wrought
You
iron?
can make stainless look like anything that you can do with steel. When you're using cable railing, those cables are in tension, so they're pulled. So there becomes another element to the design of those posts and everything, because you're pulling this cable over length. So the way things are lined up, everything has to be a little different. So you don't have the same flexibility you would if you were doing wrought iron or something like that. And the appeal to people who use the cable railing are the lack of visual obstruction.
Like I said, I'm short. I like the lack of visual obstruction, but I don't like the fact that it's ugly.
Right. If that's what, you don't want that, but you want a different kind of railing, we would have to go back and work with people to identify what.
And I think we're looking too much into this. I'm looking at these three designs right here, and let me tell you something, compared to what we have right now and what we've had, I think these are excellent designs, and I understand we all have our own personal feelings about what we think it should look like, but then we got to remember there's a cost associated with it too, that's, so we need to just kind of be cautious here and just, we might want what we want, but what we have is not, just got to consider there's a cost associated with some of the things that our hearts desire.
Could you guys explain Matt's position about mitigation? Does that mean that FEMA doesn't want to pay for any of the seawall or of the knee wall? Is that what you're saying? I don't understand.
No, there's two areas of funding for FEMA. Number one, for the reimbursement, essentially for what you had previously. They'll look at the cost of what you had previously. What does it take to put that back today? And so they typically do 75% of that. Then if you make an effort to mitigate a future disaster, they look at, well, what is the value of that structure? What level are you building it to be resilient to a storm of this level that occurs, every 10 years or whatever it is? And the life cycle of this railing or walkway is, say, 50 years. Does it get you to that 50 years over 3 Category 3 storms, whatever? They have a formula where they look at this, and they put these concepts in, and then it's determined, a percent allocation on how much they can give you under the mitigation program. At this point in time, one thing that we've looked at is the shoreline restoration. There was a level of mitigation done with that project as well. You can see there's more substantial rock and much more of it. There's also a geotextile fabric underneath it to keep the bank stabilized. And so those are all pieces of that mitigation. And that project's complete. We still don't have a figure back from FEMA as to what they will reimburse. So, this is the best knowledge we have today on what we could receive in funding. Now, we, keep in mind that last April, when we secured the Find Hurricane Restoration Grant, that $427,000 was for the T-Dock day slips as well as the promenade. So there are some additional grant dollars there that would minimize the expense that the general fund would have. So, that's, while there is some expense to the general fund or CRA, we do believe that each of these projects would be financially feasible by the city.
Could we at least powder coat this stainless and give it some color, if nothing else?
It can be powder coated. That becomes something you have to maintain into the future.
And this is time sensitive, so, we need to make a decision
Mr. Mayor, Council, I think Matt has articulated the fact that any of the options presented are financially feasible. And the question for staff, or the concern for staff, is the time. And and I've had conversations, and Matt and I and our staff with Tom and others, and we just look at, and I provided added to the agenda item, provided a fairly aggressive timeline going forward. And I say that predicated on the fact that we've been working with FEMA, and this project has been under design since, I know first came out was T-Docks, boat slips, or Shoreline, T-Docks, boat slips, and then the promenade. But we had the first public meeting in November of 2018, regarding this. So we have been working on it for a while. So I just want to, we think, and now, with FIND, I believe we're going to be A-OK, in terms of, but keep in mind, the T-Dock, as you proved that the previous meeting, the T-Dock and the boat slips was about $1.7 million. And that was about exactly what that Larry and Matt presented before FIND in terms of the cost for the T-Dock, the boat slips, and the promenade. So there's how those FIND dollars are apportioned out, which I think, Matt, was at $427,000? That was the amount? Yeah. And so we have to look at that, but it's the timing that gives me most concern, the opportunity to lose, if we're not substantially underway and moving towards completion, I do have concerns. Yes, FEMA says we can apply for the extension, but we've seen some instances across the country where it's not been, I can tell you, you can talk to our finance folks from Hurricane Matthew, we still haven't received everything back, return, and Irma, we talked about Shoreline's already done, but if we give Tom, you give Tom the A-OK to, on one of these, and again, while staff may individually have their own idea of what their preference, like every member of the public has an individual preference, you give it whatever it is as a consensus, you're looking about 3 months to do the remaining final design, engineering, and bid specification package, and concurrent with that process, finalizing permitting. I did ask Tom, Tom, can I get you down to 2.5 months? And give me 2 weeks. Then challenging my staff, or our staff, to look at the RFP process, because it's got to go out. It's got to be out there, and the bid package has to go out. It has to be advertised. It's going to be out on the market, for 30 days, and it's got to come back. Staff's got to review, rank, bring it to council. And then you all ultimately select review the recommendation of the staff on the contractor. That's about 2 months. So I said, well, could we do that in 6 weeks instead of 8 weeks? And then, okay, maybe we got a month there. Because I'm getting to the big one. Then the post-selection, at the end of the day, we get the contractor selected. On that night, that don't mean they go to work the next day. We got to go through the process, cut purchase orders, make sure a certificate of insurance, everything that we need. There'll probably be the final negotiation of the contract to make sure that we're tightened up on, and the city's interests are being protected, and we're getting the project for which you are voting and desire. And then maybe there might be some, although in this case, probably in this particular project, very minimal, but value engineering. It's probably, with Jolie Smith Center, we did that, and it brought some of the prices down and made us able to accommodate that, the Brevard Community Action Team more and some other amenities. But this project is probably limited on savings from a value engineering standpoint. And then you get the contractor mobilizing, their subs and everybody and getting everything together. And so that's about, post-city contract, activities about 2 months. And that leaves maybe 4 months, or if we can get Tom to give us 2 weeks and staff to give us 2 weeks in terms of their RFP, that would give us 5 months. But altogether, and that would bring us down to 10 months. Our deadlines are, as we indicated in the staff agenda, the FEMA's deadlines for the projects are December 31st of 2019, and for FIND it is March 2020. Now, we can apply and seek that reimbursement, or that extension, but that, if we don't receive that, that $200,000, which is $203,000, which I believe is the worst-case scenario, rises significantly by not getting any reimbursement. You know, so that's why I want to caution that whatever one you like, that's fine. It just, we need to try to come to, so I can get Tom to do it in 2.5 months and get staff geared up to roll it out and get it done in 6 weeks to bring it back to you for the purpose of getting it out there, so we can go to FEMA in good faith and say, we are under construction, here's where we are, you know, and so say it is more than 10 months. Because the 4 months is a very aggressive construction time schedule, even at 5 months, to be quite honest. I think they originally said 6, and we were like trying to back into some.
We have public comment.
Okay.
Wait till you finish.
Can I help with some information from the audience since you've let other people?
We have public comment anyway?
I think you did. Right.
Yeah, if you got a card fill out, yeah, you gotta.
No, we got them up there
Thank you.
already.
But anyway,
So I just.
Well, in terms of the urgency, nothing I'm really saying is new. I've made several of these comments all along, and I can't talk directly to him. I have to go through staff, and it just has been a very, slow process. So I'm sorry that we're up against the wall.
excuse me.
But on the other hand, I mean, sometimes I don't think I'm heard. Or, I don't know, do other people feel that way, or people in the audience? So, anyway, that's another issue. We need to make a decision on this one.
Yeah, I'm gonna let him come up. Deputy Mayor Warner, and then you can come up, Mr. Greenwood.
Yeah, we got other people want to speak too.
No, these are for something else, yeah.
I think Walter wants to speak too. I'm just going to throw my thoughts out there, and the rest of the council can move in whatever direction they want to. My vote would be for the stainless steel option for the reasons I cited before. It puts the public closer to the water, which I feel is important. But in the meantime, after this moves forward, I am going to hope that some of those experts in our community that Ed Green and I just talked about can figure out a way to make these posts in here look a little more pleasing and allow for some design in this railing as opposed to just this plain ugly. If nothing else, if those posts just had twisties or something on them, or if they had cutouts of sailboats or something, anything would make them look better than they look now. But I think it's really important, and the most important aspect for me, other than the maintenance of the plants and the safety, is to get the public as close to the water as possible, and this is the only design that does that. So that would be the direction I would choose to go in.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Roslin, I'm gonna need you to fill a card out too afterward, and then Mr. Greenwood.
Yeah,
Oh, this for his, for Mr. Greenwood.
Walt Roslin, 1628 Manor Drive. I have a little experience and training in hardscape and landscape design. And Brenda, you're totally right. You never stop people from moving in a direction or a path. And that landscape will be just trampled. If there's going to be a path, if people are going to move that way, it'll be moved. Second, there's nothing more uglier than riprap. If you're going to do something, do coquina, if it's $1 million, don't do riprap. Another thing with the rails, first I love the knee wall, but you're right. And the rails, they can be powder coated flat black and virtually disappear. That's my 3 cents.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Greenwood, yeah, these are tree.
Just to give you my 2 cents. Is it all right if I ask Jennifer to join to save some time? She has a very good question when it involves some of the funding. She made a question I couldn't answer, and it was
Okay,
a
'cause
very good idea.
We're trying to make this quick so we can.
Yeah,
move
that's
on,
why
but
I'm
yes,
bringing her.
yeah.
I'd like to see if she could come up. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Jennifer? In the meantime, the coalition group, Jennifer and several other people, they're all leaning on the knee wall as well as myself. The points that's brought up that Brenda had mentioned, she's right. There's a chance that we could spend a little more time to alter the columns that are there, as you've suggested. But overall, you've got an unobstructed view of the water, and then the area is an observation area that if you like people getting closer to the water area, right between the two columns there, you're right on top of it. And that's the only place I see the stainless steel railing. Is that correct?
In the knee wall option.
Well, you see, you get the best of the both worlds there. As far as the money goes, we can be creative. I hope the city doesn't pick something that you're going to regret, because once you pick this, it's going to be there for 50 years or more. Now, the question about funding was I couldn't answer. I didn't know how to answer. But let Jennifer take over, just for you all to know how everybody feels.
So the question was, if FEMA won't pay for mitigation on the knee wall design, would they pay for it for the riprap? So if we call it a
The
loss
riprap is
of-
outside of this project. Because it wasn't there previously. One thing that can be done with the seawall, or to ensure that that frontage is protected, at the time they do the construction on this, they can also do an inspection of that wall, maybe dig down a little bit further on those tiebacks, I think Ed was talking about, really look at it and see what the condition is, and if at that time any repairs need to be made, they could do.
The other thing.
So there's no way that we could get the mitigation dollars in another manner?
Well, it would have to be related to this project, but the one thing that I offer council, and I'll share, is like, we just had a stormwater master plan meeting, and I know that's got to be finalized, but one of the concepts that was presented that many people seem to like the idea is of like building a retention system in front of Riverfront Park in the lagoon. And so you wouldn't want to put the dollars in there for the riprap until, because then you kind of, what are you going to go back and remove that, what you just put money in? And if somehow FEMA did fund it, I will tell you, there's stories, just Google it, 6-7 years after the fact, they come in and audit, and then they ask for the money back from the city. That's happened in numerous cities, in Daytona, I think Deltona. So we're trying to make sure that we are completely compliant with what they want us to do, so we aren't 6 years down the road, a council or staff is facing like, well, how are we going to come up with, a couple $100,000? So, and I think the stormwater component, it could be something that if that is feasible, and we know that that's I don't know if Tom's aware of it.
I am.
Okay, it's the idea of creating that multi-chambered, stormwater, which is pretty innovative and would actually give more access to the waterfront. But I don't think we want to limit ourselves right at this point. And I think one of the things that Tom emphasized, say that design doesn't work, you could potentially come back after the fact and look at adding it, because it's going to be at the city's cost anyway. So it's not something that has to happen now, but it could happen after the fact, like maybe once the other project's vetted, because it's pretty innovative and would require some, permitting.
Have you all earmarked any of the late fees that are paid by water bills, the money that's sitting?
You can't use any of the, you cannot use any of the utility dollars related to this.
Well, I gotta ask.
No, the Utility Enterprise
like over
Fund
$1 million or
is,
something in there.
the point being is the Utility Enterprise Fund is responsible for maintaining the utilities. And in the bond covenants, the city recently updated those bond covenants, and we have gone to a more, I think, while it was always legally but politically defensible, return on investment, and it's reflected in the bond covenants, and we would not be able to take out additional funds other than what's allowed. What's that?
Can it be loaned to?
The utility, it just borrowed $43 million to undertake 5 years of capital improvements, and we are endeavoring to try to get their reserves up to the full 6 months, which we think is the best practice. They're about 4.5, 5. So we're trying to get them up to 6 months. So I would not recommend, I don't think I would not recommend the utility lend money to the city.
Tom, the designs here are beautiful. Wish we could have seen them when you were first here, but they look great, and the knee wall seems to be most popular. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me.
Councilwoman Costa.
I just wanted to ask, because it is cement from the promenade to the seawall, is there any way to keep the trees, the Bismarcks, to build around them, or is that just really an impossibility?
We can look at those individually as we get out there and look at it. Just in general, as Ed said, we have tiebacks through all of there, so planting trees in there where we're starting to get root growth and everything behind an old wall like that, it's going to seek every crack in the wall, it's going to seek any crack or any...
Well, these are totally mature.
Right, no, I know, those
It's not like
are
they're
older
going anywhere.
established trees, so we can
Yeah.
look at those and see if we can keep them. But in general, no, I would not plant new trees in front of there, and the plan was to relocate, there's some existing palms too.
And it also, I want to, ma'am, just to note, I know one of the questions that you raised previously was about the lighting.
Yeah.
The lighting that's on the east side now is just going to be located on the border of the west side to provide sufficient lighting for the
So those
promenade.
9 lanterns are going to, because those are like 2,000 each.
Yes.
Yes.
They would be relocated. We would do a lighting layout along there. You have some lights on the west side, so we may not need to relocate all 9 there, but they could be relocated elsewhere too, where you need them in the park. I would say on the concrete surface you have in that example, if there was a strong desire to make some of those areas that are concrete sod instead, that could be done too as a way to limit it, but the idea of the concrete, again, was to allow people and allow accessible access, fully accessible access to the waterfront. So that was the service.
Okay, we need to get moving on this. We've got the deputy mayors. She wanted conception 1, right?
Yeah.
And then what about the wall?
Well,
Are you talking about the sign wall?
Yeah, the sign wall.
the sign wall, I don't like, I'm sorry, I don't like the sign wall.
Can I just ask council to think of somebody out on their boat, and there's a festival or a special event going on, and somebody takes a picture, and they have a lot of followers, and it gets tagged in Twitter, Facebook, and they see all this activity along the waterfront, and you cannot buy that free advertising that says Cocoa, because we do have a lot of festivals and events. This is one I really, and it was Ed's idea to put it on the bridge, but I think he showed displaying, and so it's like, hey, that's Coco's Park. This activity's happening in Cocoa. On the inside, I get maybe it's not necessary, but on the outside, I really think anything we can do to promote, when somebody takes a picture from the Indian River, they know that that's Cocoa.
And there's a lot of pictures taken from the river during concerts. Yeah, I see them, yeah.
One thing I would just add on that sign too, we just put that up, that lettering, that style, from other things within the city, sorry. But we could do whatever you want or not do the sign.
I can live with it.
It's totally up to you all.
I'll live with it.
Okay, Councilman Bover.
I like the one with the,
Stainless,
The metal,
the stainless,
there you go.
that will be conception 1, I think is what it was.
That's one, right?
Yeah, the stain, that was
bottom left,
conception.
yeah.
And the same thing I would go with John on the wall, put something, Riverfront Park, Cocoa, or whatever.
I think you just want Cocoa
Yeah.
on that.
Well, I think you should put Welcome to Cocoa or something like that. Like Welcome to Cocoa.
More friendly.
Instead of just Cocoa, I think Welcome to Cocoa with an American flag on both sides.
That's something we can
Yeah, you got
deal
the
with
flags
that
there.
later.
You don't want to over-design the brand.
Yeah, and the Marine Corps emblem. Make sure the Marine Corps emblem's in the middle.
Right next to the Red Sox, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's just move on, and Councilwoman Cost.
Anthony.
Well, I'm in favor of the knee wall.
Okay, what about the,
As far as, that's where I really wish we had had the outlook in the center and put Cocoa on it, but I'm sure, okay, the advertising, okay. I'm ambivalent. but-
Councilman Goins?
I'd like to listen to a lot of citizens, and I have way more people wanting the knee wall. I always visit Cocoa Village, especially when I'm stressed out during the day. I take a lot of walks out there, so I don't mind a knee wall. I like it, and I definitely the Welcome to Cocoa sign, like Councilman Bovera said. I think the pictures and those things inside and out would possibly be good, you know, for a welcome sign. People weddings and so many different prom nights or whatever the case may be. I think that advertising would do good for us. So I'm in favor of the knee wall.
I can't believe you guys did that to me.
Yep.
Pam,
You, buddy. It's on you.
Pam, Shay, you can come on up and
Put that stress on
see
you.
what she has to say real quick.
Don't start sweating.
Kind of backfired on me, didn't it?
Okay, so, good evening, I'm Pam Shea, 308 Bavard Avenue. I have Tales at the Barkery. It's past my bedtime, like yours. Okay. First of all, thank you very much. This is a very hard project, and so as a person that has 2 businesses here and spends a lot of time in the village, you've done an excellent job, and I wouldn't want yours, okay? And Ed, you know I don't want yours. So all I want to say is I truly understand the funding, John, because we need to move on with this project, because we'll lose that funding. 40 years in DOD, money goes away, guys. It changes colors quickly, and we're on the verge of hurricane season, and then we'll just get pushed behind. So, John, your team has done an excellent job. As far as the lighting, there is no lighting. Ed, we have this conversation a lot. For 10 years, you've heard me talk about lighting. This council has heard me talk about lighting. There is no lighting. I'll look over, see, the chief is smiling. He knows. There is no lighting. That's my favorite subject around here. So please, when you go to do this design, let's get better lighting. Let's look at doing lighting on the ground. Let's use a lot of solar. Let's really think big. Go down to Cape Canaveral, okay? They have beautiful solar lighting. I gave a presentation 2 years ago to the city. Nothing's been done about it. Please, when you look at this, look at that kind of lighting. It's beautiful. It's hurricane-proof. They've had it down there for 10 years, or close to it. Okay. The next one is the design. I've toured a lot. I've seen a lot of these walls. That concrete thing's going to come down. Absolutely not, okay? Totally agree with you. Wouldn't want to do it. The other one, I'm sorry, guys. Go back to your picture that you show from the water. So when you come over the bridge and you're in $1 million boat or $1 billion boat, no, the other one. That one, no, the other one that looks like the prison, where you have Coco. Okay, one more. Go back. That one. Okay, you're coming over the bridge. Does that look inviting to anybody in this room?
No.
Thank you.
Looks like a prison.
Thank you.
Yeah, cool.
It doesn't look inviting. Now, why would I want to be stuck on that bridge and look down there and see that? I don't even know what I'm looking. It's not inviting, okay? So my point is, as you move forward, I'm for the knee wall, okay, or a version of the knee wall. I think Councilwoman Brenda said it earlier. Let's use a wall, I know. So let's use the wall that we can design. Look out there, Boston Harbor has a beautiful wall, okay? I went to Dubai, same kind of wall, okay? They all have these same requirements, okay? So we have safety, so let's look at it. It doesn't need to look like the prison wall, okay? It can have a rail, it can roll, it can do something. But let's just determine this tonight, whenever you guys want to determine this, but we're going to live with it, and we want it to be beautiful. We want to be that spot when you come over the bridge, okay? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, staff doesn't disagree. The only thing I want to add to you is, like, the one thing when you're looking at this image, you're not seeing the context of the park in the background with the band shell that adds with the other elements that already exist in the park. We don't
Yeah,
have
that's
that backdrop, so it won't look so cold and like a prison wall. You have that whole beautiful riverfront park and band shell.
Okay.
Okay, you don't have one.
I don't have a direct one
Okay, that's
this week.
Yeah.
And that's with the,
That's with the railing.
That's with the
The
railing.
stainless steel railing.
Well, the railing,
That's
they can
with
see, they can
balustrade.
see
Where's
the
the-
promenade, right?
That's with the knee wall.
knee wall, yeah.
So,
So I make a motion that we,
Well, the mayor
Well-
hasn't made up his mind yet, so let's let the mayor make up
we
his
just
mind.
made it up.
Well, I've had a lot of input with reference to the knee wall.
really lit up.
And whatever we do, it's something we're going to have to live with for a while, so I'm just going to call it the knee wall.
But that's not the concept of the lighting. Those two, it's going to be more lights than what's shown in that picture.
We actually, in that picture, moved the lights opposite, the
on
lights that are on the east
on the
side.
on the cocoa portion, just on that cocoa portion.
Oh, on the sign?
On the sign
Yeah,
itself.
we didn't design the lights
I
yet
got you.
for how
I got
we
you.
sign up. To be honest, we can get it, what you want that sign to say.
I got you. And then do the lighting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And design the lighting.
Yeah, if you put Councilman Bovair's name on there, then he'd like it. But anyway, we got, all right. Well, the directions is three of us for the knee wall. What do you, someone need to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we go, what was that, option 3?
The knee wall option.
The knee wall option.
Yeah.
And also that it seemed that we had some consensus on the signage, although I don't know about the welcome, just because.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
'Cause you're already in Cocoa.
Okay, so my motion is that we go with the knee wall with the cocoa sign.
The knee wall, the one where you can't see the park from the water.
No.
No, the balustrade
This is the knee wall, right?
was, the balustrade was the one.
Yeah.
Could see it.
Second.
Yeah, we got a motion from Councilwoman Cost. We got a second from Councilman Goin. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. We have 2 nays. It passes 3-2.
That's too much.
Okay, we're going to move on to our next item was appoint a council liaison to the Police Community Relations Advisory Committee, Administrative Services. But first, I'm going to make a comment. I don't think that we necessarily need a liaison for this committee. I think if the council wants to attend these meetings whenever they have them, they're more than welcome, but that's just my suggestion.
Yeah, because it's not a board.
But anyway,
It's not a board.
all right, you can go ahead.
Okay,
Yes,
well, this is the only one that we didn't have a liaison, so
Yes, ma'am.
we thought we'd bring it to you.
It's just my suggestion that we don't even have a liaison for this board.
I don't have a problem with
Yeah.
that.
So, I just know that from experience, we've had a tendency, with certain boards, and I know I've done it myself, where you interject yourself into the committee meeting. And I think this is one of those committees where council need to just kind of step back and observe and just listen, and then just kind of go from there. It's my personal opinion.
So then I'll make a motion that we do not appoint a liaison to this advisory board.
Second.
We got a motion from Deputy Mayor Warner, a second from Councilman Bovair. Any comments or no comments? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Okay, we're going to move on to city business for the final ranking of selection of our bid for Q19-12-CLC. Assistant City Manager.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this item is to approve the final ranking and selection for bid qualification 19-12-COC to the University of Central Florida for Police Department Strategic Planning Services, and allow the city manager to negotiate and execute a contract not to exceed the fiscal year 2019 budgeted amount. Answer any questions you may have regarding this item.
Thank you, sir. What's the wishes of the council?
Motion to approve.
We got a motion from Councilman Bovair,
Second.
second from Deputy Mayor Warner. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Item number 2, approve resolution waiving the competitive bidding process for the purpose of making emergency single source purchase of Train 30-ton roof HVAC system. Public Works Director.
Yes, Mayor and Council. As you said, this is to approve a resolution approving waiving the competitive bid process to purchase a replacement HVAC unit. It's on the utilities building. The cost of repairing the existing unit exceeded almost 75% of the the cost to replace. Staff felt it more prudent to replace the unit. They have a long lead time, so the item has been ordered, and we are requesting council's approval for the way in which it was purchased and the emergency.
Thank you, sir. Deputy Mayor Warner.
I just have a quick question. Ed, the current unit that we're replacing, how old is that unit?
As old as the building, about 12 years old?
Okay.
9 years old.
Okay, thank you, that's it. Motion to approve.
We get a motion from Deputy Mayor Warner.
Second.
Second from Councilman Bover. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Item number 3, approve a tree removal permit for an oak tree in the right-of-way adjacent to 2656 North Indian River Drive. Community Service Director and Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Dodie Seelig, Planning and Zoning Manager, has a short presentation for you.
You ready to go, Ms. Doty?
Okay. So the applicant is requesting removal of an oak tree. It's located in the right-of-way in front of his property at 2656 North Indian River Drive. Mr. Shive initially contacted the city's Public Works Department about the tree in November of 2018. Stated that the tree had a dead limb hanging over the roadway, and he feared that it might fall and hurt someone. And at that time, Public Works removed the dead limb, but did not remove the entire tree. The property in question, the tree, is in front of the red box on your map. It's on, as I said, North Indian River, where McFarland joins it at the north end. So we have a photo here of the tree with the limb before it was removed. And then this photo shows the tree limb portions that were taken down. You can see some kind of voids in the centers of the trunks there. So in January of this year, Mr. Shive submitted an application for the removal of the tree, citing further ill health issues beyond the limb that was removed. In February, he emailed that a windstorm had brought down more limbs. Public Works staff has stated that the tree appeared healthy, but they have no objection to Mr. Shive removing the tree, provided it was at his expense. He has stated that he's willing to pay for the removal of the tree. This is a photo of the tree, and you can see there's a short area of level ground, and then the lot drops off considerably. It's his intent to build a house on that property. That photo was looking up into the branches. It's a little hard to see the bark I was trying to capture there. So when we come to tree removal permits, there's 2 questions. One is the removal of the tree, and then the replacement of the tree. So in terms of our code, because the tree is in the right-of-way, the tree removal permit is required, and because that tree is an oak tree in the right-of-way, the tree board should make a recommendation to the council regarding removal. In terms of the code for that, this section of code has to do with emergency removal of hazardous trees to mitigate imminent threats. Staff's finding that the tree in question doesn't pose an imminent threat to the public at this time, that the limb that was overhanging the roadway was a threat. However, that's been resolved, and therefore removal of the rest of the tree will require approval of the council. In terms of criteria for removal, a letter requesting the tree removal is to be forwarded to the city, and the enforcement official then has the option of granting permission if it meets certain guidelines, if it's hazardous, if it's diseased, if the trunk is closer than 7.5 feet to the foundation of a structure, if it's within 10 feet of a structure and has an aggressive root system, or if the trees are to be replaced elsewhere, either on the property or on another property, in accordance with the replacement code. Staff's finding is that the hazardous tree means, well, sorry, let me skip through that, I don't want to read all that to you. The applicant at this time has not submitted a determination by the city arborist or a certified ISA arborist demonstrating the tree to be hazardous. However, he has stated that limbs frequently fall from the tree, and several tree trimming companies have informed him that the tree is unhealthy and needs to be removed. Regarding replacement, as a condition of granting a tree removal permit, applicant is required to relocate or replace the trees with an equal number of trees of diameter at breast height. So in this case, the subject tree is about 40 inches in diameter. The option would be one tree at 40 inches, or since a tree is defined as a minimum of 4 inches, then that would equal 10 trees, or some combination thereof. And whenever possible, the code suggests that the trees be replaced with the same species and a native species where possible. In addition, because the tree in question is an oak tree, specifically in the public right-of-way, the tree board's recommendation to council is to include a location and species of replacement tree. The tree board has recommended that replacement trees be the same species as, in this case, oak tree, and have recommended a location at the corner of Manor Drive and Beverly Road. I've added this in, but this, I apologize, wasn't in your original presentation. I have photographs for you that were provided to the planning board at their April 9th meeting by Mr. Koss, the board member, to answer the question of why Manor Drive and Beverly Road. He had provided these photos. This one was taken in 2011 of that corner, this one taken in 2016, and then this one taken in 2019. So at the proposed permit was requested, was heard by the City of Cocoa Tree Board, which is also the planning board, at the May 1st Planning and Zoning Board meeting, and they recommended approval with those conditions. So the motion before you is approval of this removal permit for an oak tree in the right-of-way adjacent to 2656 North Indian River Drive with a replacement tree species and location determined by the tree board to be an oak tree and planted at the corner of Manor Drive and Beverly Road. And John, do you want me to address the other letter?
Yes, I know there was the question out there regarding whether the city looked at it. We did ask, because I know Ms. Dolphin sent an email today regarding the same issue in terms of the arborist looking at it, because there was no arborist report submitted with the application to remove the tree. And we did ask, while not currently serving in the position that required him to be the city arborist before, he still has his certification for the next couple more months. And he looked at it, and at the end of the day, I provided council the memo. He does, to summarize, it's a mature oak tree with some defects. Does note that, deficient rooting spacing, uneven crown, previous storm damage, potential rot, potential hallows, but this tree appears otherwise to be healthy, but with signs of decline. There is some hazards, and he does identify, some of those hazards in terms that relate to this tree. It could be property, vehicles, bicycles, pedestrians, and the size and weight of this tree, if it was to fall, would have an impact, essentially on the roadway, the right-of-way. And so that's. Again, it's a memo that I provided, and it was done on a short order notice, not a full, in-depth, report.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, man. We got a number of cards here, so I'm gonna, if it's all okay with the council, I'm gonna go ahead and let these individuals come up and speak real quick. We got Judy McClooney. Finally.
Wow. It's a relief to walk up here. Judy McClooney, 1908 Manor Drive, and in that neighborhood. And my husband and I walked down to really take a good look at that tree. And it is in line with the many beautiful trees that line Meridian Street, that line McFarland, and that line the River Road. The only thing is that north of it, it's a good way till the next big oak and a little bit to the south on that side of the road. So it holds a place there. It continues the line of oaks down River Road that we so much appreciate, that brings tourists, bicyclists from Cocoa Village, everything that makes our community special. It has a character, it has a grandeur, and so we who live in the area and those who visit take it pretty seriously, and we're hopeful that the concerns for our trees and for our oak trees are really upheld by the regulations, that it's not just window dressing, that we can have a voice. When you take down a tree like this, you hurt the entire community, the sense of our properties, and this tree gives shade, it fills in the line there, and it's quite distinctive. So there would have to be a really, really good reason, if any ordinance had held its salt, it was worth its salt, that to take a tree like this down, because it's very valuable to all of us in the community and in Cocoa. So what could be a reason to take it down? Well, we looked at the issue of the potential developer having a drive. He has room for a drive. The tree is not in the middle of the property. It's a little bit over to the north. And there's already a sand drive down to the bottom there from the road, and there's plenty of room. So it couldn't be that. Is it a dangerous tree? Well, every tree down on the River Road, every oak, has at times lost branches, and so far, I mean, they've survived for hundreds of years. We've survived. It isn't considered by an ISA arborist to be a threat. The man who was not an ISA arborist, he said it's going to fall. I mean, it hasn't fallen in over 100 years. He is not an ISA arborist. I don't think his is the best opinion. And finally, the final point is this developer has no plan at present. He hasn't submitted a plan. He's promising that it will be maybe a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years. You know, there's only one time
Thank you,
that
ma'am.
the tree only has one chance. When it comes down, there's no bringing it back. I will not see its like in my lifetime here. You can't replace it with a bunch of little saplings.
Thank you.
So there's always time to take it down.
Yeah.
Let's wait until he gives a plan, let's think about it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Walt Roslin.
Good evening again. I'm healthy with some signs of decline, so please, nobody cut me down. This ordinance has to be amended, but you got to get rid of this ISA arborist expert, because that doesn't make a tree assessment expert. You got to be an ISA expert. You have to have another certification as a risk assessment. So I've been certified for over 20 years, and I don't make tree assessments because I don't have, last time I was trained was 15 years ago. So if you don't have this special training, you need to amend it so that it's an ISA arborist with the credentials of a assessment, risk assessment. Anyway, I don't expect to take much time, but Mrs. Nancy Cabana donated her time, so I could speak for both of us. One reason many people chose to buy homes in Cocoa was because of the urban forest. And what gives an individual or a city the right to remove or mutilate trees without proper procedure or qualifications, and what gives them the right to reduce our property values and saleability of our properties. Like Judy said, these trees affect the whole community, not only monetarily in value, but also emotionally and our physical health. You know, I'll get to that point. Citizens and municipalities should be confident that companies and individuals dealing with trees are qualified. As it stands now, companies and individuals with no knowledge or limited knowledge can mislead citizens by claiming they are licensed or they are arborists. And this is very bad, because there is no licensing for tree companies in Brevard County or the state of Florida. You can go right and get a business tax for $30 and call yourself an arborist. As for, like I said before, as tree assessment, an arborist cannot just be an International Society of Arborists, but they have to have the proper experience and training. Like I said, I have over 40 years of experience in horticulture and 20 years as certified arborist, and I do not, and I can look at trees and work on them, but I don't do risk assessment, and no one should unless you have the proper credentials. Okay, here we go. Okay, this is not an issue of just one tree. It is a matter of culture and a matter of perception. We all perceive the world from different views. Let's try something if you're willing. Let's do a little experiment. Okay? Okay. Let's imagine that you are designers, right? And I'm going to give you a design project, an assignment, and see if this can alter your perception of reality. Okay, I want you to design something that uses solar energy, something that makes oxygen to sustain our lives, removes carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, changes nitrogen so it can be used to support life, distills water for rain and drinking, makes complex sugars and food and fuels many life forms, creates microclimates, houses organisms that reduce diseases such as malaria, dengue fever or breakbone fever, West Nile virus, yellow fever, and encephalitis. And then I want you to throw in something like it changes colors with seasons and it self-replicates. Okay? See if you can design something like that. Well, we don't have to. This has already been designed. It's a tree or trees. This is literally beyond the capacity of our intellect to fully understand, literally. It is beyond a name or a definition. It is a reflection of God. It is a miracle. It is just as sacred as any church, synagogue, mosque, or temple. It is our moral responsibility to protect these beautiful beings. That's it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Barbara Kinsey. Okay. Dennis Childs.
May I make the same request, please?
I think they want me.
Okay. Linda Dolphin.
Thanks. First of all, I'm Linda Dolphin, 2100 North Indian River Drive, and I wanted to turn in a tree report that I had done by a certified arborist, as well as a type of arborist that Walt recommends, because when I went to him to see if he would actually evaluate the tree for me, he said, no, I can't do that type of work. So this is a person that does that type of work all the time, has some testing done, and I'm going to turn it in for your review. But in order just to be quick, I wanted to kind of let the audience know what was in that report. So we've certified his abilities. So I'm going to skip my first 2 paragraphs to make this quicker. But this is basically the following points in that report. First of all, at the tree board meeting, they couldn't even determine that the tree was a live oak. I didn't hear that once. So the first statement is, this tree is a live oak, approximately 200 years old. Simon Stratford administered a chlorophyll fluorescence test to 20 leaves after inspecting the tree and concluded that the tree is healthy. So now we have 3 arborists saying that the tree is healthy, despite what the tree trimmer and the lot owner said. Something brought up at the tree board was that all these ants came out of one of the limbs that was cut off. So Simon says evidence of ant colonization does not necessarily indicate the onset of the structural failure of the tree's canopy. He says this tree should have no greater likelihood of limb loss than any other of the similar oaks on the street. There should be no greater difficulty in the removal of this tree in the future after the house is built than if it were removed today. It is important to the continued health of the tree to cordon off the surrounding area, however, around the tree during construction, leaving only the roadway which currently is serving access to the lower area of the property, and that the tree trunk and root system must be protected from heavy equipment, which has been sitting out there for months. I would think that would be against code enforcement, but we have to get that equipment off. We have to cordon off around the tree. We have to make sure that no further limbs are actually taken off. He also recommends pavers in lieu of impervious materials once the building is up. The tree should then be tested again after construction to see that it's continuing to remain in good health. And then he can do further tests for you if you need. He says they're not necessary. He can do a test that will determine that the core of the tree is not hollow. And I spoke to him a little bit earlier, and if for some reason you're unwilling to take this report today, he's willing to come here next week and speak before you if you'll invite him. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, Mr. Childs.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Dennis Childs. I'm actually Linda's husband, and I echo what she just said. And this particular arborist is also an assessment, is qualified in the assessment end of things as well. So one of the things that I wanted to point out, and the reason I wanted to come after Linda, is that there is a potential problem in the future that I think is very important to address now. And I think if you vote in the end to preserve the tree, this has to be one of the things that may be incorporated in with your motion, a consideration of this problem, and that is the septic system. My understanding is that a septic system and the oak cannot coexist on that lot. There just isn't enough room at the top to put in a drainage field and avoid it being right next to the tree and over the root system. And whether it can be put down near the lagoon, a septic system, I'm not sure. I just don't know the regulations, but I doubt it. So what I would like to avoid is having the project merrily go along, the health department issue a permit for the septic system 2 years down the road, and have the developer, builder, say, well, look, I've got a horrible hardship here. I have all this money invested in a house that's up and so on, and I have to be able to put the septic system in, and have then, at that point, the tree having to be cut down to accommodate the septic system. So I wanted to alert you to that, just so that it could be considered at this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Barbara Kinsey.
Good evening. I'm Barbara Kinsey, 1628 Manor Drive. And I'm here also to refer to the report that Linda talked about, Linda Dolphin. I want just to point out to you that it is clear that we have evidence that the tree is healthy. Please take into account that the evidence has been provided by a professional that is trained in conducting tree assessment and evaluation, and we should rely on expert assessment to make a decision here. I think it's very important to have trained professionals in tree assessment to evaluate the health of our trees in our community in general, because they are an invaluable asset to our community, and we should do the best we can to protect them. And it is important also to consider the precedent that we are going to establish here, because as Mr. Simon Stratford, who conducted this assessment, we should rely on science and the latest technology to evaluate our community trees. As you know, and as Linda pointed out, Mr. Stratford, conducting a test for the health of the tree, concluded that the tree physiologically is healthy. And he also, as you will see in the report, pointed to other aspects of the tree, such as the root system also. And he also referred to other tests that are available in form of sonic tomography and ERT to determine the integrity of the trunk column, but from the external signs exhibited by the tree, he did not see the point of this test. But he would be more than happy to carry this out as it would be required. He would also be very happy to come here and talk to the council if you have any questions. So again, I think it's imperative in order to protect our community trees to rely on these scientific methods, because they are available, they are out there, and we should do that because the trees are so important, again, to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Council, what is the wishes of the council? Do you have any further comments on this, Mr. City Manager? Or?
No, actually, I really don't. I mean, I provided you the memo. I mean, I don't know if our arborist is, I was looking at the risk assessment credentialed, but he said there may be some defects, but he said the tree appears otherwise to be healthy. I just felt it was important that, that we as staff provide you some basis, since there was not a report submitted with the application.
Is the applicant here?
Thank you, sir.
Applicant is not here, correct?
Deputy Mayor Warner.
The applicant.
I just have a couple of comments. One, we've lost an awful lot of oak trees along the River Road lately. And we had a brand-new house built not too long ago where they lost an absolutely magnificent magnolia tree because the contractor was not careful in preserving that tree. And I agree with Mr. Broslin, this is something that we need to look at least maybe under the auspices of the Planning and Zoning Board, because we are going to lose more healthy trees to construction that don't need to be lost. I understand if this tree is going to prevent this home from being able to be built, that it may need at some point to come down. But I watched a whole bunch of healthy trees come down on Beverly not too long ago, and I realized there was an arborist that said, they were at the end of their life. And I know trees have a life, and this tree's 200 years old. It probably is at the end of its life cycle of what you would expect a live oak to live. But if it's healthy, it's not going to fall on somebody's head. Why are we going to take it down? I mean, if it was on my property and it was preventing me from building a home, I might. But if it isn't preventing the home from being built, it isn't preventing, then I don't see any reason to take it down. But we definitely do need to make sure that in construction, these trees are protected, and we're evidently don't have anything in any of our ordinances to protect trees during the construction process. And if nothing else, we just need to educate our public that they need to let their contractors know that they expect the trees to be protected when construction is going on. So I'm not inclined to vote in favor of taking this tree down at this time unless the applicant can show me that he can't build a house without it coming down.
Thank you, ma'am. And the only thing I was seeing was that his concern was the health of the tree. I didn't see any other concerns other than the health of the tree. And then from some of the reports we have, it's, I don't know.
But I'm all for planting that other tree at Manor and Beverly. I don't think we need to wait to take this one down to plant that one.
Councilwoman Cost.
Yeah, I was going to say on the report from our arborist, the rooting space on the west side is also limited due to a paved roadway. Well, that applies to every tree on North Indian River Drive. I mean, every one of them. And then the size of this tree, another argument is that its proximity to aerial power lines limits the city's ability to maintain it safely. That applies to all of those beautiful oaks along Indian River Drive. Gosh, like Walt, I was feeling healthy, but I'm quickly in decline here. As this meeting is going on, I would vote against this, and I have some concern about our ordinance, because I tried to look at this really confusing. I know that we modified it, we changed it a while back, but, I would like to see that looked at again with more of a fine-tooth comb. In fact, I downloaded some things, some guidelines for tree ordinances that we might want to consider, and it was brought to my attention that, in fact, we did pass a resolution at one point to be Tree City USA. It was, I think, in 1994, and so we're going to unbury that resolution, and I understand from John that we're going to make efforts to come back and be that again, because I don't think this homeowner or even the one on Manor, that they're bad people. I think it's people just have, they may come from different backgrounds and have different aesthetic values, but what people really don't understand are what the ecosystem services are that this tree is providing to the entire community. And that's in stormwater management, that's in shade, cooling the street, that's in providing habitat, that's in aesthetics. So hopefully Tree City USA would allow us to do a little more of that education.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mayor?
Sorry to talk so long.
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
sorry, I just want to, I apologize for interrupting.
No, that's all right.
In speaking with our planning and zoning manager, the property owner was not contacted, and the planning and zoning board meeting was May 1st. So there was another council meeting between that. So staff is asking that possibly you would consider tabling this until we can get a hold of the property owner and he can come and speak on his behalf. I apologize for that.
Yeah, definitely.
Can I ask council, is it your direction, if the property owner believes that the tree is not healthy, that he provide his own assessment with the credential that, the tree, the risk assessment credential, as Mr. Roslin indicated?
Yeah, because that was the only concern I was seeing that he had, was that the tree wasn't healthy. But then we're hearing the opposite, so.
I mean, I'll ask Anthony, is that appropriate for council to say, we're considering your application, we'd like that you to provide a arborist report with specific, specifically with that credentialed. I mean, I looked online as Walt was talking about it, and there was a lot more than just what, being an ISA certified arborist.
Sounds good to me.
Do we need a motion?
I think table it and request that it come back at such time that the applicant can provide the report.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we table this, that we invite the applicant to come back, that request that he provide
Report from
a
an arborist.
report from somebody,
From an arborist.
The arborist
from
with
an
the
arborist
ISA.
with credentials to make these analysis.
Thank you.
We got a motion from Councilwoman Cos.
Second.
Second from Councilman Goin. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. And please don't bringing that tree ordinance back, because I'm telling you, we've spent some months, almost a year on that, and I'm sure that, yes, it's a lot better than what we had, but we've spent some time on that, so. But anyway, we're going to move on to our item number 4, which is, thank you everyone for coming out. But we move on to item number 4, approve a resolution for amending the fiscal year 2019 budget. Finance Director.
She's asleep. Sorry. That was me. All right, sorry, Mayor and Council. This agenda item is requesting approval of a resolution to amend the budget to approve a change order for Stantec Consulting. If you all will recall, there was a stormwater workshop, and at the workshop, staff was directed to kind of go back to the drawing board and come up with a tiered approach for the stormwater fees. And so this budget amendment is necessary to provide funding for Stantec, which is the consultant, to perform a revised method of calculating what the stormwater fees are. And through this method, they'll go back and look at each property, residential property in the city, and determine the impervious areas in order to come up with that tiered structure that was discussed at the stormwater workshop.
Thank you, ma'am. I thought they were really good partners with the city. I thought they'd do this for nothing, but I guess I was wrong.
How much is it?
Well, I'll just let you know that there's about 300 hours of just working hours, I think they indicated, of just the GIS person doing the analysis, let alone the quality control and the other.
Right.
So that's pretty significant
It's
amount of,
quite a process that they have to go through.
Yeah.
especially since we want
He's
it
talking.
legally defensible.
I'll get to you in just a second. We got a motion from Councilman Boisvert,
Second.
second from Deputy Mayor Warner. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. And item number 5 is a multi-year contract, administrative services.
Yes, sir. This will be a quick one. It should be. This is requesting approval of the second contract modification with Guerin Group as the City of Coco's insurance broker of record by mutual agreement between the city and Guerin Group to extend the term of the agreement until February 28th, 2020. Just a little bit of background. The city put out an RFP, I can't remember, in April, was it April? We decided, we had a committee to evaluate the request for proposals for new brokers, February. And at the end of those review of the proposals that we received and evaluating cost, it was hard to come up with an apples-to-apples comparison of our current broker and online enrollment system that we use to do our benefit enrollment. So it was determined that the best interest of the city would be to continue this agreement with Guerin Group to get us through our benefit enrollment we're currently in the process for right now planning, and then bring a new RFP out early next year to do the process again to get new cost quotes for the broker services, so.
Thank you, ma'am. What's the wishes of the council?
Motion to approve.
Got a motion from Deputy Mayor Warner.
Second.
Second from Councilman Boisvert. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Okay, you got your information agenda there. Any advisory boards and committee reports? Okay, Mr. Weigreff.
No report, sir.
Thank you, sir.
No report, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
No report, sir.
Thank you, sir.
No report, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, I've only got like 20. No, there's no more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trained her well.
sir.
Thank you, sir.
Chicken.
No report.
Thank you, ma'am.
No report.
Thank you.
Oh, come on.
Mr. City Attorney. Thank you, sir.
No report, sir.
Thank you, sir.
I'll save mine till next
Councilman
meeting.
Oh,
I can save mine to the next meeting.
thank you, sir. Councilman Goins.
The Memorial Day too, but June 7th to the 9th, I will be attending with Councilwoman Cost, the EMU in Palm Beach Gardens, and also we have a Memorial Day coming up, and this Saturday we having a basketball tournament at one of our crime-stricken parks in Cocoa, 6 p.m. With the help of Cocoa Police Department. Thank you, Chief, for helping us out with that. I think we have V-Cops and police out that night as well. I think that's really the first time I know of that anyone did anything at night in that area. So I think we're be shaking some things up, hopefully, in that area. So I have nothing else. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Cost, I'm sorry.
Great. Well, I welcome the Florida Sun Co-op and a meeting at the Florida Solar Energy Center before this meeting tonight, so that's well underway. There are about 70 people in attendance, so it's looking good. Also, Boys and Girls Club had a great opening. That was really impressive, that facility. And then tomorrow, there will be some volunteer leaders, citizens, Pam will be one of them, that will be meeting to talk about the Cocoa Tigers Chorus, and we're going to be setting a date for the concert that will be at the Village Playhouse. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Deputy Mayor Warner.
Just one thing real quick, Mr. Mayor. I was able to attend the services for Deputy Sheriff Adrian Moss Beasley, who is also a member of our Diamond Square RDA for many, many years. I just wanted to say thank you to the City Clerk's Office for a lovely proclamation and providing a display copy for the family, as well as multiple other copies of the proclamation that could be shared with the family. They really appreciated it. Lovely service. The Sheriff's Office did a great job, and for those of us who knew Adrian and worked with him over the years, he's going to be greatly missed. He spent a lot of years volunteering for the city of Cocoa, on top of the many, many hours that he spent working for this community as a deputy sheriff. Graduate of Cocoa High School, went on to play college and professional ball. We're all going to miss him, and I just wanted to say thank you to Mrs. Shealy and her staff. They did a stellar job on the presentation for the family.
And you as well, ma'am, because I've heard it from a few folks that said you did an excellent job
Thank you.
presenting that. So
It was hard. I knew Adrian. It was really hard. As a matter of fact, I spent a lot of hours with him at the Florida Redevelopment Association meetings that we used to attend. Because of the Sunshine Law, he couldn't discuss the things he was learning with other members of the Diamond Square RDA, so we would sit down and talk about all those great ideas that he wanted to bring back to Cocoa. So it was enjoyable, and he reached out to me back in the 90s when my brother-in-law was murdered, and we kind of got close after that. So I appreciate the opportunity to do it, too. Thank you.
thank you, ma'am. And I know the clerk's office has been very busy, so big kudos to them. I call them our therapists. Because you walk in there, and I walk in Carrie's office, and how's it going? And I look at her, I'll say stuff like, you don't want to know. But when I leave there smiling and laughing, so I really do appreciate them. And I don't think they're getting paid enough for their profession. But anyway, Councilman Bovair.
I have no report, sir.
Thank you, sir. And then I'm going to be real quick. I had the opportunity to go to Space Coast Health Foundation for the 2019 Community Health Needs Assessment. Very interesting, very informative. I'm going to actually go to the website, or have the city manager, if you can, go to the website and pull some of that information down and give you some of that data, because it was based on age, It was based on race.
Healthy but declining.
Yeah, and it actually gave you the statistics from the South Brevard, the Central Brevard, and North Brevard versus the state and national. So very interesting. A lot of good information. Also, I was a keynote speaker at the Cocoa High School Student Government Council inauguration. They were bringing in their new officers, so I had the pleasure of doing that. It was very good. I really enjoyed it. Just seeing the parents and the students that were involved in the student government at Cocoa High School. I mean, that school has really come a long way, so I'm just really impressed by the stuff that's happening there. And also, if you all didn't know, Mr. Mike Cicerilla, when our co-board, very good friend of mine. We've had many of conversations. I know he was in rehab here just a little while back, and I was there visiting him prior to the elections. He passed away Friday, and he's going to be greatly missed as well. He spent back in the 90s when I was on the co-board. It was on the co-board with me as well, and really enjoyed talking to him. He was a great guy. Donated tons of money and time to Cocoa High School band. Great golfer, and he retired from the county parks and rec. So we're going to miss him. Some big shoes to fill on that board, so we're looking for some people that are interested in joining our co-board or want to be on the co-board. That just go online and fill out an application so we can get that moving. And also a big kudos to the police department at Cambridge Elementary School. It was a great event, just seeing the kids coming up and the popcorns and Mr. Dowell back there. He's always out there. He did a great job, as well as Mr. Hathaway and Officer Delatorre. Yes, we'll be doing the same thing tomorrow with the little ones, this time the real little ones. So it was a great event, and I'm just going to leave it at that. And don't forget Memorial Day. Captain Ed is going to be speaking. And so just bring out your umbrellas and your seats. And
The parade before that.
Yeah, the parade.
The parade before that.
Yes, sir. And there will be a parade prior to that. I don't have the times, or
5:45.
5:45? Okay.
6:30, the ceremonies begin.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Well, with that being said, I'd like to entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
We get a motion from Councilman Bovair, a second from Councilwoman Cos. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
What do you always laugh, Brenda?
He wants to go to Flying J and get some coffee.